Blacksmith of the Apocalypse. By Arcuser. Chapter 401. Running Man. What do you mean why? I say no, I mean no. Now, go away. You don't know who you are talking to. Exactly. That's why I ask you to leave. I'm also part of the evaluation team. Seth thought for a moment. Are you one of the clowns that kept standing in a corner? You guys are really something. One ambushes me in the toilet and the other follows me into a bar. He lamented. The young man blushed. You could have just approached me at the banquet. I wanted to talk with you in private, he said, slightly embarrassed. Then get an appointment at the guild house. I was chosen as the team leader. It seemed inappropriate to ask a subordinate for an appointment. The princess can call you everything she likes, but I am nobody's subordinate. Seth started getting annoyed. Anyway, I have to talk with you in private, he said undeterred and sat down at their table. Can I also have a drink? He continued. Suit yourself. However, I'm not paying for people who invite themselves. He had started browsing the list of drinks, but the moment Seth mentioned paying himself, he quickly paid his attention to the cheaper options. Why are even the cheap ones so expensive? He mumbled. Then don't buy, if you can't pay. Whedon fired a shot and shrugged his shoulders. The intruder finally ordered the cheapest drink on the menu. How about we start over? I'm Ben Harker, he finally introduced himself. And what do you want, Ben? Ben-eyed Whedon. Don't squint at my friend like that and state your business, Seth commented ill-humored. I wanted to ask you. Why are you not using your power more? I saw your skills at the party and heard about your status in Delta. You could help so many people with your capabilities. What are you even talking about? Seth already spends quite a lot of resources to help with the evacuation of Beta. But he could do so much more. You could hand out or lower the price of your wares. With better equipment, the people would have an easier time surviving. Your money could help a lot of people. Minasmar could help pacify the wilderness. I'm sure you could even help me close some of the high-level dungeons out there. Whedon took a breath, but Seth stopped him. He took a sip from his drink. Why should I? Why? Ben asked, perplexed. Because it is the right thing to do. As a person. As a human being. We were given such immense power. We have a responsibility to use it for the good of everyone. Given? Seth asked, emotionless, but he was boiling under the surface. Yes, we were given this power, so we should help where we could. Seth took a deep breath. It had been some time since he had felt calm reaction at work. Tell me, what did you do since the world went to shit, to gain power? Of course, I fought. I killed monsters and closed dungeon to protect the people of my city. That's what brought me the class hero. So, you got a rather strong class to start off, and then kept leveling by fighting and helping people. Yes. I saw it as my duty. Enviable. Do you know my experience right after the apocalypse? The hero looked at the blacksmith. He didn't know where this was going and just waited for him to continue. I got a class I never really wanted. Even when I came to terms with it, I could only run. I ran and ran. I had to work a lot, just to have a chance to survive and choose my fights. Even after I thought I had found a way out, I had to keep running. And I had to keep working hard just to have a bare minimum ability to survive, he explained coldly. I didn't. I know a girl who was in the middle of severe depression and lost both her hands right before the system was implemented. She managed to survive under the inhumane circumstances, crawled from the worst shit you could imagine, was forced to watch her companions die and be tortured, and still managed to go on and became powerful today. And you are trying to tell me that after all that she, or me, or anyone else who went through something similar, have a responsibility to sacrifice our time, or possessions for some vain altruism? No, but many people died and suffered, but everyone on Earth was given the chance to grow. Those who grew have worked hard for the change. You have no right to demand sacrifices of them. This conversation is over. But what about the people that are still suffering? I act when I see a need to, not because some hot air balloon tells me to. With that, Seth stood up without another word, paid for his and Whedon's drink, and pulled the dwarf out of the bar. The barkeeper shot a burning gaze at Ben, who had just chased away one of his best customers. The hero awkwardly drank his alcohol and left. Tower Master, are you okay? Yeah, I'm just pissed. I always disliked these kinds of preachers. The dwarf nodded, pondering. Seth had always disliked people that wished to push their own morals onto others. Of course, this was more about fictional characters than people. He had never thought to actually run into someone like that. This had been his first time. If something like this was the leader, maybe, he should rethink joining the evaluation. Or have a talk with the princess. That night he was alone in bed. Mina and the other were still in a high-level dungeon. He had a hard time calming down because of calm reaction, so he decided to enter the workshop. What should he do? He sat on the ground, closed his eyes, and took a deep breath. Then started energy circulation, too. Concentrating on synchronizing his mana flow and breathing always helped him calm down. Driven by inspiration, he stood up and began refining Olympian silver. Before he had already struggled with refining ordinary silver, but with Kin of Fire he was ready to do it with Mithril. Even then, operating the breathing technique of Hephaestus and refining the metal was a task that took his full concentration. With the bars of Mithril he had looted from the stronghold, there were almost 200. After several attempts, he managed to turn 45 billion Argentine pesos of Mithril into 30 billion Argentine pesos of epic Olympian silver. Looking at the clock, it was just the right time now. The 6th hour of the day. Seth went to the storage room, where he stopped in front of a special shelved. Rows and rows of vials with blood were here. This was special blood. They were all the blood sampled from jackal and donkey-type monsters he and his friends had collected in the past months. Because of the randomness, he had not delved back into making bones of Seth. But he felt different today. He brought the rare blood of the Anubis jackal, a Level 80 boss monster, and the rare blood of a golden jack *SS to the formation for the bones of Seth. Once the grooves of the formation were filled with the blood, he brought out the reason he felt so confident. The meteoric iron alone was already epic and he had his lucky trinket ring. There was even a chance for it to become a legendary material. Unfortunately, the piece of iron given by Master Mountain was just about big enough to make a knife from, but Seth had another idea. It depended on the effect it would get hereafter. He placed it inside the formation and started injecting mana, following the instructions of the blueprint. The consumption was tremendous and during the process, he had to drink several mana potions to keep supplying power. It had been a long time since had last witnessed the mystic change as the blood of the formation boiled away and the steam started permeating the iron. The meteoric iron which had been black and sparkly before had turned into several shades of crimson, red and black. Bones of Seth, crafting material, special. Meteoric iron, possessing a mysterious will, blessed by the power of the god of chaos and destruction, Seth. It has reached the highest quality achievable, possessing a destructive will. It possesses chaotic properties changing between destruction, desert, and storm. Seeing the description, the blacksmith could not help doing a fist pump and a little dance. This was perfect. With the materials prepared, he returned to the soul smithy. He had the bones of Seth, the Olympian silver, and lastly, he brought out Chrysoprase core from his inventory. The core of the stone giant had a metallic property, making it almost indistinguishable from gold, by looks alone. He started humming the tune of Behemoth and began. With 9 bars of Olympian silver he forged 9 long strands he then twisted into a bright silver shaft. Using energy circulation, too, he turned the round core into a flattened teardrop shape about the length of his hand, but narrower. From the bones of Seth he forged a spear tip and fused the tear-shaped core into its base. Seth fixed the finished tip to the end of the silver shaft where he entwined it with the ends of the braided silver strands to be securely held in place. The 10th bar of silver turned into the spear's butt cap, ornaments, bolts, and reinforcements along the whole body of the weapon. He had gotten the idea because of the staff he had made for Allison. Hers could also act as a club, so why not make a magic staff that could be used as a spear? All the time, he had kept singing the tunes of the behemoth and did not stop yet. Next was the enchantment and Seth had chosen Pirithous' punishment. Pirithous was a hero who came to the underworld to steal the wife of Hades. But when he and his companion sat down on a rock to rest, they were bound to it and unable to move. It sounded like an earth-type snare effect. Seth had prepared a small plate, where he could engrave the sigil. It was an abstract symbol, that kind of looked like a butt on a stone. A single chain pattern originated from the sigil and stretched from the tip of the spear to its butt. His eyes widened when he finished the item, and could not see the stats. This meant... Ding! You are the first and you are to create a legendary item. You've gained 10 additional skill points. Ding! Title, Blacksmith of Legends gained. You have created a legendary item. All stats plus 10. Ding. Title, Dreamy gained. Your personality has reached 100 points plus 0,3 impact on others. Ding. Your skill Blacksmith, Craftsman, Leave 3 has become Blacksmith, Craftsman, Leave 4. Ding. Your skill Enchantment, Craftsman, Leave 3 has become Enchantment, Craftsman, Leave 4. Chapter 402. Giant's Meteor Rod. He smiled in glee when he realized what had happened and saw his wizard spear in all its glory. The pointy staff had already become legendary, and Seth was not even done with it. One more step was missing, the soul. It had cost him 6 big souls to repair the massive soul of Chrysoprase. After repairing and refining it had gained a sentience and part of the stone giant memories. It was a shame, that he had to damage it to this extent, which made it impossible for it to regain its original ego. However, he counted on that destructive will to make up for this. From what Alzalsar had told him about the books from Master Mountain, people like him used special materials like meteoric iron for weapons to nurture something a soul or even an ego within them. He hoped that it could act as a catalyst for the weapon to gain an ego, once he infused the soul. Before that came the enchantments. After forging the soul into the shape of the spear he used a special ink he had bought in Demon City to inscribe it. The ink had a rare rating and an earth attribute. The poem he chose to inscribe was called Sandstorm of the Demon Darud. It complemented the powers of earth and desert that already radiated from within the spear staff. Striking the iron while it's hot, Seth finished the inscription on the soul and infused it into the legendary spear. As the spear was swallowed by the bubble formed from the waters of Styx, thin sparks flashed across the tip's blades and along the shaft as the tear-shaped core gained a permanent golden glow. The sparks left strings of dark pattern that connected the black tip to the shaft and chain pattern. Ding! A synergy has further strengthened XXXXX. It was a shame that he could not appraise the spear, yet. His blacksmith's eyes missed a level to check legendary items. He would need to hit the dungeon and level some more skill points to get to Leave 7, which now cost 9 SP. However, when he checked his status to see how many levels he would need, he saw that he actually had 13 SP. Then he remembered the notifications. In his euphoria, he had not really paid attention back then. Whatever, it meant he could bring his appraisal skill to level 7. He excitedly tested his skill on the staff and promptly saw its stats. His jaw was almost dislocated when it fell open. Giant's Meteor Rod. Legendary, Ego. Damage 3000. Mag damage, 2500. Durability, 5555. 1 plus 60% Earth affinity. 2 plus 150% to the effect of all Earth attribute skills. 3 mana costs are halved. 4 spell damage is tripled. 5 passive skill, Desert Magic. 6 plus 20% additional curse damage to Earth attribute skills. 7 passive skill, Pirithous Bind. 8 passive skill, Sandstorm. 9 active skill, Desert Storm. The terrifying hybrid of a spear and a wizard staff. Made by the hands of craftsman Smith while borrowing the power of divine blessings. Many divine and demonic powers intermingle, creating a chaotic weapon of destruction, even able to deal damage to the opponent's soul. Usage requirement, skill, Earth Magic, skill, Earth Affinity or higher, Blessing of Seth. Passive skill, Desert Magic, no cost. Allows the wielder to learn desert spells, a compound magic of earth, wind, and fire. Passive skill, Pirithous Bind no cost, 5 SCC cooldown. Stay right there. Hits with a single target attack have a 50% chance to cast Pirithous Punishment on the target. They will be bound to the earth until they managed to overpower the binding force. The binding force is based on the strength of the wielder. Passive skill, Sandstorm. In every nook and cranny. The spear will recite the sandstorm in battle and summon a sandstorm to cloud enemy vision. It has weak item breaking and damage over time effects. Active skill, Desert Storm no cost, 30 minutes cooldown. Summons a Habub that hits a wide area, blinding enemies and dealing damage to targets and items. Targets have a 20% chance to be hit by Pirithous Punishment. Seth was unable to take his eyes off the item. He felt it again, this feeling of disbelief that it was really him who had created something like this. The name was a little ambiguous, but it wasn't as if Seth disliked it. The skills by themselves were already quite powerful, but added with the other effects like additional curse damage, even the simple sandstorm could deal damage that was difficult to resist. Using telepathy, he tried communicating with the ego, but it still felt rudimentary, and was unable to answer coherently. Seth did not worry, he was sure it would grow once it ordered the stone giant's memories and gains its own experience. He lost track of how long he just sat there, staring at his spear and stroking the rod, when he suddenly heard an unfamiliar voice call out to him. Tower Master! Seth looked up in shock and took some time to recognize who had come to his door. Is that, Karina? It was the Dryad. Can I enter? Oh, sure, come in. The Dryad entered and sat down at the work table beside him. What brought you here? Weren't you with Pip and them? The children are asleep, she answered with a smile. I couldn't help but wander around. All I've known was my tree and the forest. I saw light and got curious. I understand. Do you want me to guide you through the tower? Ah. No, I didn't want to disturb the tower master. You seemed busy. She blushed a little. Oh, don't worry about it. And you can just call me Seth. Then. Could I ask a question, Seth? She asked. Seth only nodded and signaled her to keep going. Is it really okay? Reviving my tree, giving me a new lease on life. Letting me spend time with my children. And all you want in return is to take care of your herb garden. I mean, I also might come by to get wood for staffs, you know. Still. It seems so little to repay you. Especially since you also prevented me from corruption. This was giving Seth a hard time. He really didn't do it to get anything specific in return this time. He could do something good for the children he took a liking to and gain a strong ally. It was more interesting than using her souls to make yet another weapon. He scratched his head. Oh, I know. How about you teach more people in Minas Mar about that nature magic? Will that? She was nice to a fault. Please don't ask me if that is okay. In my opinion, taking care of the children and the herbs would already be more than enough. Just take your time, spend it with Pip and the others. It's really enough for now. Okay, she finally agreed with a warm smile that could melt a man's heart. I will take my leave then. She bowed and left again. Seth wiped away his sweat and fell back on his seat. Why did he have to meet so many complicated people today? Despite the stress, the sight of his new staff on the table immediately made him feel better. With this in his hand, it was time to really start practicing earth magic. Now that he had made such a huge advancement in his research, he would have more time in the future to improve his combat skills. In the following weeks, he split his time between crafting items, researching golems, practicing music, and improving his combat skills. Although he had weapon mastery, he had always trained with a sword before. Once Monique's team returned from their dungeon dive, he asked the spear demon for some organized classes in handling the spear. Practicing and sparring with her also helped him a lot in adapting to the lame one's walk, the movement skill he had gained from the blacksmith god. Monique enjoyed an easy time beating him up. Despite the passive improvements from his soul armaments, he could barely keep up with the professional vanguard. They only used practice equipment, so the worst that happened was some man bruises and bumps. This reaffirmed his choice to stay in the rear guard. He might be able to put on airs against ordinary people using his advantage in equipment, but in the end, he severely lacked close combat skills. Other classes had many active and passive skills that would boost their output. Seth on the other hand could only rely on his superior equipment to make up for the lacking skills. If Seth and Monique fought in full gear, he could probably beat her, or others like her. But why would he fight someone else's strength with his weakness? He was a little better in terms of magic since he had all the right affinities. But compared to a specialized mage class, he still needed something like the Desert Thorn to keep up. Good thing he had declared himself a bard for the evaluation, and all of these were just insurance. He would love to just stay in the back and play music, while everyone else would take care of the fighting. Chapter 403. Slimy but satisfying. Ellie, how is the new room? Seth asked the slime rancher while entering the slime compound, which was how they came to call this place. Ellie had joined Minas Mar soon after the meeting and asked for a room to work with her slimes. The room was filled with many shallow basins of various kinds because all slimes needed a certain level of humidity. He had built the room for her, but the interior was left to the rancher. She possessed all kinds of special ones such as acid, poison, blood, or even lightning slime. And every kind of slime needed its own basin tailored to its needs. It was quite impressive to see many different variations of the same beast in one place. It's great. It was so hard trying to deal with these guys in the city. Han was so nice and helped me make some special basins. Come, I will show you. The room, or rather the hall, was filled with rows of basins, fish tanks, and terrariums holding the huge variations of slimes. The quirky girl went along the rows and kept calling out names. That's Humboldt, you already know him. And these are Jim, Jim Bob, Jimmy, Jimmy Jr., Jimmy Sr., Jeremiah, and over here we have the rare breed like. Oh, here. This is Luna, a rare moon slime, and those are Loony and Lunatic, her offspring. She lifted up a pale slime, giving off a bioluminescent blue glow, before pointing at two other, similar, slimes. This kept going for almost an hour, during which the girl showed her impressive memory for names and slimes. She introduced at least 200 different slimes to him. Sorry, I got absorbed in showing you around. Why did you come by again? She finally finished the slime introduction as they sat down at a small table crammed into a corner. While she did her best to make everything perfect for the slimes, her own place was almost non-existent. I actually came by to bring you one of these guys, Seth said, relieved, and put a minigolem onto the table. Wow! Finally, I get one, too. Thank you so much. She immediately grabbed the golem under its arms like a doll and lifted the minigolem into the air, looking at it from all sides. I will call you, Humpty. She immediately named the golem and put Humpty on the ground. By the way, did Allison already come by? Allison? Do you mean that serious alchemy girl? Yes, I gave her some slime acid and boy fluids. It doesn't really hurt these little guys anyway, she said with a chuckle. They talked for a while longer, when Mary suddenly walked in on them. So this was where you've been hiding. I need you to look over the agreement for the trade route and sign a few other things off. What do you mean hiding? Are you implying I have been evading my duties as the Tower Master? Seth exclaimed indignantly, at which Mary only stared at him coldly. Fine, fine. Let's go to the office. It's been nice talking, Ellie. See you later. Mary and Seth vanished from the slime ranch and reappeared in the Tower Master's office, where Seth sat down on his table. Mary handed him a stack of paper which was an extensive agreement on the rights and duties of Minasmar in case they opened up a trade route to Y City. He already got tired just reading all of this. I think I don't tell you often enough how much I appreciate your work, Mary. You don't. But it's okay. It's nice to know that I am needed and that I am able to use my education in times like this, she answered, but did not look him in the eyes. Was that a slight smile he could see at the corner of her lips? Who would have thought that this shy and insecure priest girl he had picked up as a poster girl for his shop, would turn out to be his biggest help when founding an organization? He had to praise her more often. What would he do if she were to leave? He would be lost. Who would buffer all this paperwork? I think you should give yourself a raise, Mary. Hehe, are you finally realizing my worth? And I already did when someone tried to poach me. What? Someone tried to? The princess did. I simply raised my salary to rival her offer. I'm glad you are this loyal. You saved my life after all. And where else could I work as freely as here? Right, right, better be king of the pond than another fish in the ocean. So, since we have the agreement, how far did the chimeras actually progress? They haven't done any long travels yet. Mostly because they have to be careful thanks to the golems. They will proceed slowly as the golems grow. What's the progress in Beta? Mary gave him another stack of reports. Roughly 20 bigger guilds were now involved, together with the army troops and a great number of smaller guilds and miscellaneous parties. There were also many people from Beta that had joined the efforts instead of seeking refuge. 30% of the estimated refugees had already arrived in Y City, where they moved into the sparsely populated region at the rim of the growing safe zone. It was one of the reasons Y City agreed to start such a costly and wide-scale evacuation. They had a lot of empty space after the war with the Maritime Empire. Seth had seen it for himself when they went to get Evie. If those depopulated places were once again filled with people, it would drastically increase the safety and strength of Y City. They went over some more paperwork before Seth could finally leave. He planned to look for Mina and Finn when Ellie suddenly came charging at him. Her hand tightly grasped around its tail, it dragged the emoji along. Why was the emoji with her? Did it sneak out of his pet space? Mom, help! My tail hurt. Seth. This is your pet, right? I demand reparation. Both had tears in their eyes, but obviously for different reasons. What happened? He ate Harry, Hedwig, and Hermione. Not on purpose. Okay, okay. Everyone calms down. Ellie explains first. After calming down a little, she described how this little scamp had snuck in her ranch while he was not looking, and she found him eating 3 of her dark slimes. Namely Harry, Hedwig, and Hermione. The emoji-eating slime, Seth almost couldn't believe it. The snakelet had behaved really well since they returned to Mina's march. It had spent most of its time playing with the children or practicing magic with him and Allison. Why would it suddenly behave like this? Mom! Did I do something bad? I didn't do it on purpose, it communicated with big teary eyes. How did you accidentally eat 3 slimes? I was just looking around, and those dark ones looked so delicious, and before I knew it, I ate one, and I couldn't stop, and. It's okay, it's okay. It's not. Ellie interjected. Seth signaled her to stay silent. Why did you go into Ellie's room in the first place? The emoji now looked from left to right, as if it was embarrassing. If it could, it might have blushed. I heard all the names while in the pet space and became envious, and You were envious. That's why you ate them. Ellie hollered, peeved. No. Mom, I didn't. Believe me. I only went to look at their names because I don't have one of my own. I know Mom will give me one when the time comes, but... Seth sighed. So this was the reason. He had procrastinated giving the little snakelet a name because he did not want to be too casual about it. You still haven't given your pet a name? You monster! Ellie suddenly stood on the emoji's side. Harry, Hermione, and Hedwig's fates were forgotten. To be honest, I have been looking up names and thinking about it, but I was just unsure. A name is for a lifetime. It should be a good one. Ellie blushed a little at the indirect slap to the face. She simply named everything randomly depending on her mood. Mom looked for names all the time? I'm not that free, but I narrowed it down to 2. Fokker or Tatzel, which do you like? Fokker was the name of a lucky dragon from a story Seth liked as a child. Tatzel was derived from a dragon race called Tatzelworm, which was one of the few wingless dragons. Overall, it had many parallels with an emoji. I like the ring of Tatzel. Yes, I am Tatzel. Tatzel said and kept happily chanting its name. Chapter 404. Fair. Mountains southeast of Delta. Once we wiped out the pack of wind rippers in the gorge south of here, we will be finally able to pacify that goddamn dungeon that keeps spitting out monsters, the orc-headed chimera explained to a few others while pointing around on a map. The problem is how. We already tried 5 times and were lucky not to have lost anyone, one of the others commented. They were currently in the temporary commando tent of their expedition. For the past weeks, they had been working down their way through the mountains along the maglev tracks towards Y City. With the help of the Golem Knights, they carefully cleaned up the surrounding, leaving a mostly safe route in their wake. A few days ago, they had come across their first major hurdle. In a gorge a few kilometers away from the tracks was the entrance to a huge dungeon, that had broken a long time ago and kept spawning huge numbers of monsters. The chimeras had cumbersomely wiped out the packs of dire wolves, mountain bears, and frost spiders that had come from the dungeon and settled down in the area. The only hurdle left now were the flying reptiles that held the pass. Their strength and speed made the wind rippers nesting there a bigger problem than expected. They were a mix of a flying reptile and a bird, and even more territorial than wyverns. They attacked anyone trying to enter the gorge while hunting and chasing away monsters spawning from the dungeon. Lacking in mages on the level of Azul, or similar long-ranged classes, the chimeras had a hard time dealing with the flying opponents. Sorry for the interruption, sir, visitors have come, a messenger barged into the tent. Visitors? Who would visit us in this place? They say they are reinforcements from Mina's march. The group of leaders stepped out of the tent and followed the messenger. Outside of the camp stood a group of 25 humanoids. Most looked like humans, but a few also had elven ears or beast features. The fur of a bear and the head of an orc. Are you Pertu, the current leader of the chimeras? One of them stepped forward and spoke while weirdly rolling the R. Yes, I am. Gret. This is a letter from the Tower Master. We are your reinforcements and we bereft a new batch of golems to help. I am Kartu, the current leader of the Fair. He introduced himself and handed over a letter. I see, this seems legit. And where is the batch of golems? Hair. The chimera's eyes widened when he saw the full force of the reinforcements. Suddenly, he was confident there would be no more problems in the close future. Minamar. They were in a simple guest room of Mina's march. On the bed before Seth sat a man around his own age. It had been a day or two since he moved into his room. You have to face her at some point, Seth spoke to the man. The man wearing simple clothes just sat there and stared at his own hands. She will be happy. No. I left her alone. I told her that I would always be there for her, but I failed. How could I face her? After all the suffering and pain. What kind of scum would I be to crawl back now, after all this time, and proclaim myself her brother? Why did you bring me back? It finally broke out of him. Anger and sorrow were mixed in his voice as he screamed at Seth. The blacksmith answered after a moment of contemplation. Why did I bring you back? Seth took out a small booklet and threw it in his lap. I admired the willpower of the person who wrote this book. You were so obsessed to get back to her. So driven to survive. Even after death, you wanted her to be safe. What happened to that? You just said that you promised to be there for her. You are here now, why can't you be there for her now? I want to, but it's been so long. I'm afraid. Afraid that she thunk. Seth suddenly shoved a knight helmet onto his head. If you can't face her then don't. But you can still be there for her. I didn't put so many precious materials into your body, so you can sit around and feel sorry for yourself. Wear an armor, cover your face. You can reveal it to her when the time comes. But let me tell you one thing, the longer you wait, the more it will hurt both of you. What do you think, Edward? Think. Right now, you could have a beautiful reunion with your little sister. If you wait, you have to explain why you waited. And once you realize that you will wait even longer. I'm telling you, just go to her now. Seth said and left. He took off the helmet after the blacksmith left. With a disheveled mane of black hair covering Edward's sullen eyes, he sat there and stared at the helmet in his hands. What do you think he will do? I don't know. Give him some more time to think, he told Evie, who had a hard time holding herself back from charging into the room. Obviously, Seth wasn't going to let some dumb drama play out. Evie already knew that her brother was back among the living. Age had not kept it a secret from her, once he succeeded in reviving the people he had harvested on the battlefield. Through refinement, he had been able to restore the ego of most of their souls. The 25 people who had asked him to harvest their soul, were now the members of Theta. They were ghosts that came back from the dead, stronger than ever. Despite only being experimental for the most part, the base performance of their bodies already rivaled an Ori Huma on level 40, at level 1. They needed it since they lacked the Ori prefix or the blessing of the system god like everyone else. Edward was a matured prototype with stats comparable to the mid-50s. If he became a knight or a warrior, there would be no problem for him to join Evie's party in the dungeons. Seth grasped the sad girl's shoulder. It's okay. I will wait for him. She wiped away her tears and smiled at him. She had really grown stronger, he thought to himself. He patted her shoulder and smiled back. If you may excuse me, I have an appointment with Nico, to take the measurements. Silently he appeared in the workshop that was prepared for the tailor. Puffles was here too, to supervise the tailor's work. Recently, Nico Booz had reached level 50 and gained the epic class tailor of Ivice. It specifically boosted the power and properties of attire made from Ivicer thread. Puffles saw it as his holy duty to guide the new tailor on his path, to serve a fallen god. Or rather, to use the skills meant to serve a fallen god, to serve Seth and Mina's march. The blacksmith looked forward to items made of the new thread. It already had a great effect when he just used it to sew leather together. Even though Nico was just a journeyman tailor, with the special materials it should at least rival Naddle's work. First of all, he wanted new pants and a shirt to wear below the armor, instead of Naddle's pants and shirt. For his new role as a bard, he wanted a robe. A person in the rear needed a robe. Mina had told him the whole evaluation was broadcasted across the Empire. Against what others may think, Seth was not interested in multidimensional publicity. Just the thought of all the work and potential enemies he could incur by showing off on live TV. A robe would hide most of his equipment, and as long as he kept to playing the bard, his other skills would also stay a secret. Look who the it dragged in. Puffles commented when Seth entered the tailor's workshop. Where did you learn to talk like that? Nico keeps talking like that. Don't pick up weird habits from him. Weird habits? The tailor joined them and asked. Don't worry about it. What did you think of the sky silk? It's a fantastic product. The celestial bronze and ancient bronze, too. Puffles is really amazing. And this class? His face froze and his right lower eyelid twitched as if he had flashbacks of some terrible memories. It was worth the hardships, I guess. He glossed over his trauma with a smile. Puffles looked very smug when the tailor praised him and his products. No wonder this guy started picking up weird habits, with Nico gushing over him like this. Give me a week and your items should be ready. Booz said with a smile after quickly taking his measurements. Chapter 405. Somewhere else, 9. Subcontinent Theta. I don't want this anymore. An exasperated merman was slouching over his throne. My prince, the messenger asked worriedly. He had just gotten news of their advances in Beta. As if it was not bad enough that the Orihumas grew with incredible speed, this was even one of those advanced worlds. The natives came up with all kinds of weird technology. This would not even be that much of a problem, but what was up with all these reports? Living dungeons, irregular monster hybrids, mysterious illnesses, and to make it all worse there was even a rebellion? Just what is wrong with this world, he complained looking at the map they had recorded so far. They had so many problems even with the Orihumas running away, which was a problem since this meant they were unable to acquire vassals. Was this still worth all their trouble? Those old coots were right, this world had a great expanse of ocean, surrounding one great continent, and there was no other maritime power in the patchworks competing with them, but that was because the oceans were way too dangerous. If it wasn't for his target being almost completely depopulated by storms and floods, before they arrived, he would have ended like his brothers. This prince was lucky to secure a bridgehead on land when the pathways had just opened. His brothers were supposed to grow their strengths in the oceans bordering Beta and Epsilon but had been chased to the shores the moment they arrived. In the end, they were ground up between the land dwellers and the alien ocean monsters. Only he was left, and the bridgehead he secured was the only safe entry point for their empire. It had taken roughly a year to prepare a safe route to Beta in the east, along the subcontinent's shoreline. And now that they were finally able to send their troops to Beta, he found that their land was even more chaotic than the sea. The pitiful resistance the natives and their reinforcements put up was his smallest headache. He thought it was a very intelligent strategy to use the lunatics' own experiments against them and ambush them, using the captured foot soldiers they had kindly distributed across all of Beta. Who would have expected this to come back to bite them? The people of this world were even crazier than the mermen could have ever expected. Who in their right mind would try to splice different species and magic diseases? Half their army was plagued by contagious diseases their priests could hardly keep at bay, while a sizable number of former infantry units and weird hybrids were following a rebel with the power to overcome a noble's influence. Even worse, they themselves were completely immune to these plagues. My prince, a servant asked. The merman prince sighed. What else? It's the elders. They are asking for a report. The servant raised a crystal ball on a pillow. This was a special one, meant for interdimensional communication. As if he had not enough problem, the old coots also kept breathing down his neck because his advance was too slow for their taste. Elders, what can I do for you? He asked after activating the orb and answering the call. Greetings Prince Moor, we called to inquire about progress concerning Petalusia Magna. The first elder spoke. You mean Beta? Don't call it by its ugly native name. Call it Petalusia Magna, as I mean the Emperor named it. The third elder complained peeved. Fine, fine. I will be honest. It's not very good. A lot of problems kept cropping up. The rebel army has grown again, as that revolutionary's powers grow. This, what was he called again? The second elder tried to remember, scratching his wrinkly forehead with his bony fingers. He calls himself Adam. Though appraisal shows that his name is number 967 in his status. I am sure you will be glad to hear, that you soon won't have to worry about those problems. What do you mean? We will send the Crown Prince to take over the pacification of Petalusia Magna. But do not worry about that place. It is not of your concern anymore. Do not worry, your contribution will not be ignored. Who would believe that? First, they annoyed the hell out of him, and now that the worst part was over, they send the Crown Prince to reap some easy contributions. Moor was not an idiot. His father, the Emperor, was on the deathbed, and the succession was not as clear as one would think, despite an appointed Crown Prince. On the outside, he looked indignant, but inside the Merman Prince could only sneer at their simple-mindedness. The Crown Prince was a bloke who could only solve problems by throwing raw power at them. A perfect puppet for the Council of Elders, but a terrible leader. Especially when facing a chaotic situation with quick changes. The Crown Prince will have a tough time in this world. Who knew? He might even lose his life. And maybe Muir would help him with that. Or maybe he would just watch the tragedy unfold and watch from the sideline. Either way, he was glad not to be concerned with Beta anymore. Krana. Hey Herbert, you should start getting used to the idea of saying farewell to that sword soon. What? What do you mean? The owner of the sword is going to come to Krana for the evaluation. The owner? He's also the guy who made the sword. What? The person who made this is coming here to fetch it. But, how could we give this back again? I'm not even half done with all the tests I want to do. Stop being so shameless. He already lent it to the Empire for free. Now you want to just keep it. If you act like this, he might not give us any of the other artifacts to research. Other artifacts? Albert. You are a good researcher, but you should read the reports once in a while instead of just doing practical tests all the time. This man turned a whole archangel into items. If you make a good impression, he might leave another one here. Albert, the researcher, looked at the macabre sword on the table. He had spent the past months researching this relic. It had many properties that aligned with the theocracy of chains, which was an incredibly interesting topic to research. The sword, for example. There were several powers they had currently researched. In a fight, the sword could cause silence or stun on hit with an about 50% chance of triggering. It also had a low chance to trigger an enslavement curse on an opponent who lost the will to fight. The by far most interesting power of the sword had little to do with fighting. If the sword was pressed at the throat of an opponent, it could compel them to speak the truth. They had thoroughly tested this power and found that it could be used against anyone with a lower willpower than the users. It was completely independent of levels or other attributes. If he could have other artifacts like this, from the same source, what more could they learn about the theocracy? Do you think you can let go? Okay. I will get it ready, he said with a sigh. He was really unwilling to let go of the sword. Are you sure this is correct? A man with a majestic blonde beard asked his advisor. He placed the thick stack of papers back on his desk but kept staring at the words. It's a forecast from our best clairvoyant. Is this all we know about that world? Yes, Your Majesty. The prophecies concerning this world were sparse. It doesn't seem like there are many extreme dangers to look out for, but the overall difficulty seems to be rather high. We didn't announce the goal for the valuation expedition yet, right? Your Majesty. Do you really consider sending a bunch of adventurers there to retrieve the? He stopped himself from speaking it out. There were all kinds of spells and magics that could even retrace a sentence someone spoke in the past. Aren't they all promising and powerful youths? They can also grow a lot on such a journey. There is much to gain in a fresh world, too. The princes and princesses might disagree. They are my children. What right do they have to go against my word? As you wish, Your Majesty. I will take care of the preparations. Chapter 406. Krana. Jess, did you get what you wanted from the storage? Kukiku, marvel at my new epic wand, peasant, the woman laughed to herself and swung around the new wand she had gotten from the storage. With a staff of thaumatic oak and a mystic ruby at the tip, the power of my flame has doubled. James could only smile wryly at the antics of his girlfriend, but he could understand her. His eyes burned with zeal when he just thought of the new sword at his waist. He did not wish to argue, but he was at least 3 times stronger after choosing a sword that fit his style. The couple had managed to connect with Lydia on the trip and were allowed to join Field Team 3 under her. As official members of the field team, they were allowed to purchase epic items from Minas Mars storage at a discount. Of course, they were provided with the oath armor and equipment, but unrestricted items were a little stronger. Especially the newer ones the Tower Master was currently churning out were a nudge above the others. Most importantly, they were their own. It was one of the greatest privileges in the field team, and if they ever left Minas Mar, they would be able to keep them. In the last 3 months, they had worked hard and saved up money to upgrade their equipment. When they heard that Team 3 was chosen to accompany the Tower Master to Krana, they scraped together all the money they had saved and got a new weapon each. Say, is it really okay for the Tower Master to leave right now? She suddenly said solemnly. Whoa, where did that come from? He asked in surprise as he kept stuffing personal belongings in his inventory. It's just. The days in Delta had become colder in the past months. Snow started covering the streets of Delta that had been quite summery despite its high altitude. It seemed like a change was drawing closer. The climate in the city was not much better. Travelers from other world had become more numerous and conflicts with locals and local business kept rising. Especially the situation in Beta had riled up many people. Don't you trust the Tower Master and Monique? The evacuation of Beta is almost finished, and Monique has already proven that she can take care of Minas Mar, in the Tower Master's absence. But it sounds like the invaders in Beta are giving it their all. The reclamation efforts ended in crushing defeats. The little information that made its way back implied that the invaders were pulling all registers. Don't worry. They would first have to cross the mountains, and even if they did, I would bet that even if everything else crumbles, we will not lose our place to return to. James appeased her worries. Seth unknowingly shared their concerns. Things were looming on the horizon, and it made him unsure whether it was right for him to leave at a time like this, but Monique, the progress they made in the past months gave him confidence. The golems and chimeras had gone through massive improvements and most of the field teams had breached Level 70. He felt they would be able to deal with whatever might happen in the close future. And if all things failed, there was Alzalsar. She was the grey eminence in the shadows. Few of the members knew what exactly the sorceress was capable of, but even if a dragon decided to strike down on Minas Mar specifically, it was simply courting death. Seth had gotten a glimpse at the sorceress works. She had taken quite a few of materials of Minas Mar, but the kinds of items she made, had Dragonbane pale in comparison. It was a shame that they were 100% anti-dragon equipment. With Alzalsar in Delta, he had no need to worry about this place. Aside from Team 3 that came along as bodyguards, Finn and Mina joined him on vacation together with the rest of Team 2 aka Yulekat's Fur. While Finn, Bulko, and Lixus were looking forward to visiting the capital, Seth was sure that Mike was aiming for a little vacation with Lydia of his own. While the higher ranks of Minas Mar were occupied with preparations, Seth was zealously working on the last golem. It was his biggest project ever and he had worked on it for almost a whole month straight. He had to go as far as to build a special assembly room because of the size, and even after he managed to assemble and engrave all the bones and cover them in armor, Seth still had to face the biggest hurdle. It had taken him a bunch of tries and a lot of persuasion with the help of Tatzel to finally succeed. With this had finished everything he thought necessary before leaving for Krona. He had long since finished his equipment and even the sky silk clothes had been prepared. The only thing still bothering him was that he was unable to see the stats of the Helm of Hades. Even with his blacksmith's eyes on Level 7, he was unable to appraise the divine artifact. But he had a clue: the bones of Seth he had made from meteoric iron. Its rank as a material was special instead of legendary or unique. And Alzalsar had once mentioned that it could need special requirements to take a glimpse of divine might. So maybe it was not dependent on his skill level, whether he was able to see the helm's power. This probably meant he was not yet worthy to take a look at the divine power. Just what would it take to be able to please such a magnificent and dignified existence like a god? What? What did I miss? I finally get out of isolation, and you are telling me he tries to lay low. Seth complained regretfully. Just go away and watch the VOD. Hermes barked. How can you tell me to go away? He's my champion, too. I'm going nowhere, I'm already hyped for the adventure. Seth hollered, his head beat red. Then just watch in silence. Hermes threw popcorn at the furious-looking god. While Hermes and Seth were bickering, Hades and Hephaestus were having a serious conversation. Apollo won't like that one at all, the blacksmith god commented. Don't tell me he still isn't over that, the god of the underworld argued. You know it's not something he is able to let go of. Maybe we should prepare something. It will soon be time. We would want unneeded conflict. Says who? Seth suddenly joined the conversation. I've been locked up for 6 months. I want to see as much unneeded confrontation as possible to make up for it. Shut up, you mongrel. I will have a word with Brother Apollo, the messenger god proudly proclaimed. Anyway, I can't wait to see that one in action. The system god interjected. I hope he can make its entrance epic. Persephone agreed. It's a shame he intends to stay low-key on the trip. We might have to wait for a while, the system god lamented. You really think he is able to do it? Persephone asked with a smirk. What? Lay low. The gods thought about the question in silence. Haha, she's right. There's no way someone bearing my name will hold back when the time comes. Seth broke out in laughter. The gods nodded in silence. None of them attested Seth the kind of willpower needed to hold back if things got annoying. Are you ready? We have to go meet the princess now. Seth had just felt a wave of vast underestimation, but he had no time to dwell on it. They had an appointment with the princess at the system church, and it was important to be punctual. Today, they would not travel via the system church channels. Lena had explained it to them during the party. To evade the system god's randomization, the Empire had prepared true interdimensional teleportation. Since it worked completely without the assistance of the system god or the patchworks, the cost and difficulty were immense. It also had a lot of constraints, such as the correct time. If they were too late, they would miss the time window for their jump. It was very similar to the way Seth had managed to return to Minas Mar, but on a much greater scale. It simply showed how important this evaluation was to the Empire. The formation was prepared in the central courtyard of the church. It was a wide magic circle drawn with sparkling crystal dust. Just enter the formation and we will send you off, Simon explained it with little words. Chapter 407. Krna, 2. Seth had done his homework before setting off. Krna was the capital of the Krna Empire, spreading across many worlds. Covering an island rivaling a small continent on its own, it was even bigger than Earth's districts in size. Though it was not as densely populated, with many forests and lakes breaking up the capital's landscape. However, no matter how much information and landmarks for sightseeing he looked up before, nothing would have prepared him for the sight that greeted him when he stepped out from Krna's system church. Wide streets covered in marble with golden inlays split into multiple layers of ground and air traffics. Myriads of different mounts and magic vehicles decked out the field of view. Majestic houses in richly decorated style lined these lanes, and in the far distance titanic monuments towered far into the sky. Statues of gods and emperors set at the characteristic points of the capital were popular sightseeing destinations, but they were so big that they could be seen from any point in the capital. The giant cathedral they had just left was proudly competing with these sights. On their way out they had walked down the majestic nave of the structure. Not only was the interior covered in masterful stone carvings and expensive decorations, many iconographies and the overwhelming stained glass windows depicted scenes of a magnitude of different worlds the system had saved and opened for the Empire. The priest that had greeted them, Samuel, had proudly shown them around and happily explained some of the more glorious happenings in the history of the church. Mina, Finn, Ellie, and Seth were already full on tourist mode and kept gushing over everything and made pictures. The other members' Yulekat's fur were a little calmer, while the members of Team 3 tried to stay serious and do their job as escorts. We have prepared carriages for everyone. Samuel explained and gestured to a row of carriages that waited for the participants from Earth. Except for Ellie, who traveled with Minas Mar, everyone party had their own set of carriages for them and their entourage. The train of carriages was surrounded by an escort of Imperial soldiers. With the princess taking the lead on a white Pegasus mount, they set off. By the time they entered their vehicles, the wide roads, with their bustling traffic, had been organized to make way for their parade. Leaving the cathedral behind, they drove down a huge lane and towards the Imperial Palace. On the way, they got to see many magical sights. Again, it reminded Seth of cyberpunk movies. He already had that notion back in Aura, but Krna went even further. The great statues and monuments in the distance were already awe-inspiring, but even the kinds of illusions and advertisements that the different shops put up made the surrounding buildings look tiny, despite most of structures being 5 to 6 stories tall. Wizards firing powerful spells, celebrity adventurers advertising a product, or even short clips of people being brought back from the dead by the shop's miracle medicine were playing everywhere in the sky. This was a world that developed with great access to magic and squeezed the fascination out of it. All of these sights seemed common and boring to the people on the streets, while it was like science fiction came alive for Seth. They soon left behind the busy city center and enter a district of big mansions with great and beautiful gardens before they finally reached the Imperial Palace. The palace complex was its very own beast. In the middle of the city rose 40m high walls that fortified the emperor's very own residence. From the gigantic walls covered in magical runes spawned a permanent barrier that could block any kind of attack or unauthorized entry. The only way in was the huge doors of black metal with golden inlays. The 20m tall door depicted scenes of the Empire's history, but they were not just decorations. Although they were enchanted with appraisal inhibition, Seth had found out that these actually were legendary items made of dusk orichalcum with many different functions, which were kept top secret. Within the walls of the palace complex were all facilities the imperial family need to live, for state business and to withstand years of siege, if necessary. Each guest from Earth got their very own guest mansions within the compound. Ellie opted to stay in the mansion of Minas Mar instead of getting one for her alone. Seth was not the only one with an entourage. Brock, Marcel, and Elsa had also come as a party with a few more members. Rich the slave Mancer came with a group of 25 people, while the Mist Demon, the Dimensional Merchant, and the Hero also had their own parties. The only ones completely alone, except Ellie, were the weird girl with the hood and the pale beauty. These are your mansions. Please stay and rest here for now. I will go and inform the palace about our arrival. Lena explained after giving them a short explanation of the palace compound. After the princess left, they were about to follow their steward to their mansion, when the hooded girl, Cade, approached the delegation from Mina's march. Here, I came to give it back to you as we agreed. She held up a necklace with a small pendant. It was the whimsical curse. Did you already finish finding all the remnants? I had almost 3 months. With the radar you gave me, it was a lot easier. With this, all chances of Zarkan to make a comeback on Earth were gone. Although his champion was sealed, there had still been hope for the infection to spread and the religion to reform. Now that Cade had ripped out all the roots, there was no way for that to happen. One had to know, even if the champion died, there would be no second chances given by the system god. You had no problems when you destroyed the item? Seth asked concerned. H had gotten a stern warning from a god when he wanted to kill a champion. Even though she was not a champion, would Zarkan really just watch? Nothing at all. I broke the radar and the soul, the only things that were left were this necklace and some broken parts. Of course, Zarkan would have tried to interfere, if he could. What they didn't know, was that the fearsome god was currently a picture of misery still locked away in a very dark dimension. He had no fun time when the god of chaos, Seth, found out whom the other had messed with. Zarkan was still recovering from the severe beating Seth had used to kill the time during his isolation. Blacksmith Seth carefully took the extremely dangerous necklace from her hand and put it into his inventory after appraising it once. The items had really grown a lot. Whimsical curse. Relic. Durability, 7000. 1 curse of binding. 2 passive skill, strengthening. 3 passive skill, whimsical power. 4 plus 100 strength. 5 plus 1500 mana. 6 passive skill, whimsical regeneration. A terrifying pendant and necklace created by the maleficent hands of craftsman Smith. Created with an amalgamation of superior craftsmanship and mysterious techniques. It is a work of pure malicious intent. If the notoriety of the pendant grows in the future, it may evolve into a legendary item. Aside from the original effects and durability growing, it even had a new function. Whimsical regeneration was technically the opposite of whimsical power. Seth could only speculate that it was a result of sucking so much life force away from the champion's soul that it took on a similar characteristic. This passive skill could increase one's healing rate based on the whims of the deranged monkey ego. If someone managed to calm down these souls, this item could become a very powerful support for that person. Maybe if he refined. Seth noticed that he had stopped talking in the middle of their conversation and an awkward silence had ensued between the two. Ah, sorry, I was lost in thoughts. Thank you for bringing it back. No, I have to thank you for helping me finish my revenge. I may not have been able to end the champion himself, but I feel satisfied now for the first time in a long while. Good to hear. Let's get along later in the evaluation, too. They said their farewells and shook hands before splitting up. Seth returned to his friends, and they entered their own mansion to rest. Chapter 408. Show your strength in a different way. They were informed that there were still a few days until the official welcome banquet. Because of the complexity and constraints of teleport magic, they could not bring all participants from the different worlds to the capital at the same time. The last group would only arrive in the next days, that's why they were pretty much free to roam the capital until the date of the banquet. As two girls of bubbly personalities, Finn and Ellie hit it off with each other and set off to discover the secrets of the capital on their own. Although Team 3 had come along as an escort, most of them had also quickly split off to follow their own interests, giving Seth the chance to spend these days alone with Mina. The center of the multicultural megapolis of Krina was a hodgepodge of races, shops, and restaurants. Between visiting the landmarks on their sightseeing tour, they would go around testing all kinds of exotic cuisine. In this giant city, with all the chaotic bustle and people, and the almost crushing presence of ads, Seth felt almost a home. Compared to his time traveling to Aura, he felt that he could enjoy his time here more since he came to terms with his anxiety concerning crowds of people. Aside from the magical advertisements and the omnipresent arcane technology, their culture of idolization also gave him a sense of nostalgia. Popular adventurers, heroes, and beauties advertised products and sold merchandise. It was almost comical how similar and at the same time dissimilar it all was to his home world. The hero king of a foreign world seemed fantastical. But the idea of him advertising the biography of his life, action figures, and merchandise of himself was so modern and dissociative that it made him chuckle. He understood now why Mina said he could become a celebrity. Maybe it was not as strong in provinces like Aura, but it did not end there in Krina. More than once they came across public events of fan clubs or even the people themselves to grow their reputation. "Do you really want me to be like that?" he asked Mina with a wry smile. Seth could see how there was a lot of potential money in this kind of culture, but just seeing these kinds of fans and fan clubs made him feel awkward. Random women dreaming of having some idol hero's child, or a bunch of guys simping for the sexy ghost doctor. Thinking that such people could be after him, that he could be the target for such adoration, made his skin crawl. In the end, he was too much of an introvert to deal with this kind of attention. Hugging his arm, she suddenly stood still and looked up to him. "It's not about money, dummy. I want to brag about my boyfriend. You are a lot better than those posers in my opinion and people should know it. But isn't it okay? There is no need to be like them. You could show your strength in a different way," she whispered in his ears. Following her gaze, she was looking at a very special kind of shop, that sold very explicit kinds of recordings. "Mina, I don't think my skills in bed suffice to become a legend in the adult industry." She suddenly laughed her clear bell-like laughter before hugging him tighter. "I think your chances are not bad, but that was not what I meant," she said, hardly able to contain her laughs. The cat girl pinched his chin and moved his view a little to the right. Only then did Seth notice the armor shop beside it. His face felt incredibly hot as he blushed furiously. Seeing him like this, the beast girl did not stop laughing for quite a while. Despite having a few days, they barely made any ground in their exploration of the massive city. However, they managed to make a lot of memories together. With him not wasting a minute on work, it really felt like a vacation. Spending so much time together could be a burden to a relationship, but contrary to this notion, Seth and Mina found that they wanted to spend even more time together. Unfortunately, these days leading up to the banquet went by in the blink of an eye. On the day of the banquet, they wore a pair of matching and extremely expensive outfits they bought in the capital. Unexpectedly, the foreign style of Krina was quite to their liking. The people of the empire had long learned that comfort was the most important when it came to clothes. Instead of being cumbersome mounds of cloth, they wore clothes similar to casual wear of earth, but with enchantments that made them look like gorgeous even attire. They were more expensive than custom-tailored fashion since it needed a talented tailor and enchanter to fabricate such pieces of art. They both knew that Seth would have to leave soon after the banquet, which was why they were intent on using this time even harder. They had splurged on this couple outfits to compete with even the nobles and royalty of the Krina Empire. Mina and Seth Smith, from the delegation of Earth. Guests of Princess Lena Maria Krina. They were announced and entered with their elbows interlocked. The illusion garment Mina wore looked like an opulent sapphire blue rococo dress, while Seth wore a suit in matching style and color. The magical qualities of their clothes made it clear what kind of fashion they wore, and their appearance made a murmur go through the crowd of guests. The blacksmith and the assassin smirked at each other, their goal was accomplished. Very self-satisfied they joined the crowd and were promptly pulled into conversations about their attire. Mina had chosen their clothes and happily explained about it while Seth just stood beside her and smiled. He was rather content with just looking at the girl beside him. Back then in Aura when they got to know each other, she had a kind of rough allure to him. She was raunchy, bright, and always said what was on her mind. Even in Delta, she perfectly fitted into the kind of nightclubs where he had met them again. Seeing his tomgirlish, sexy, girlfriend in this kind of high-class dress with an elegant demeanor, bragging about fashion, was a completely new side of her, he simply enjoyed watching. "Hey, if you want to do it in public, I am open to trying, but this might not be the best location for the first try," she whispered to him with a playful smirk, when they finally got some private time. "It's a shame, really. I would like to eat you up right away," Seth countered. "What are you guy up to?" They were rudely interrupted by Ellie, who clearly wore male attire, tailored to fit her curvy figure. "Ma." They were off in their own world again, completely ignoring Finn, the fairy added. "Don't worry, I will always be on Team Finn." Ellie supported the tiny fiend. "When did you guys arrive? Where are the others?" Seth asked belatedly. "We came together with Lydia and Mike. I saw Marcel and Elsa over in that direction, talking with Brock." Ellie explained nonchalantly. They looked at the room full of strangers. It was rather easy to differentiate the nobles from the people of other worlds like themselves by their attire. The otherworlders stuck out like a sore thumb as they wore their own style of clothing. However, it was hard to find someone you are looking for. The first person Seth recognized was not actually someone from his own group, but a figure hiding her face with a hoodie. Wearing a hoodie on this kind of occasion was extremely eye-catching. The next one he recognized was another figure wearing a hood, the hero, and right beside him was Rich the slave Manser talking with him. It seemed like those two got along quite well. Maybe they are at the buffet, the tiny fiend tempted Seth. It was true that he could go for a bite. Then let's go look there. Mina read him like a book and decided for them all. Chapter 409. Battle at the Buffet. Seth. Marcel greeted them when they encountered them at the buffet. Funny enough, Lydia and Mike were together with them. The united friends started their assault on the exotic buffet like true bumpkins. They had just started, and Seth had only finished 2 plates when the princess approached their group. Seth, she asked awkwardly. Oh, princess, what's up? I wanted to introduce you to someone. Seth excused himself and followed Lena. The hall was big and full of people. It took a while for the princess to compliment her way through the masses of nobility that kept approaching her. Finally, they came to a group of aged men. These are the researchers of our Imperial Institute. They are responsible for most technological advancements in Krina. The sword you lent me was also investigated by them. So, you are the blacksmith who forged that remarkable sword. I have to tell you, we had quite some work testing it. Albert here spent the better part of the last months trying to reveal the weapon's secrets. A jolly old man with a well-trimmed beard approached first. Dean Myers, please don't expose me like this. A slightly younger man with a scraggly beard said embarrassedly. But isn't it the truth? I heard you spend every free minute on that research. It's true, but our friend might get the wrong idea. I don't covet your possession, I am just fascinated by it. It's already rare to find divine materials that elude the effects of the system. For someone to not just get their hands on them but manage to create an item from it is almost unthinkable. It is such a great chance to learn more about the system. Albert suddenly started gushing. Is that so? It was really something I did on the spur of the moment. Seth smiled awkwardly. I heard that you have created more of these artifacts and there was a chance you might entrust another to us for research, continued in excitement. My dear Albert, you should hold back a little with your enthusiasm. This is still an official event. Dean Myers scolded him. I'm sorry. Albert immediately apologized to Seth. It's okay. To answer your question, yes. I thought of lending out another one, depending on the results. On that note, I believe you visit the Institute tomorrow to collect your sword and check the research results. That's okay, right Dean? Lena interjected. Of course, the jolly man said with a bright chuckle. His Majesty, the Emperor of Krina, Leander Cornelius Krina, the magically intensified call of a herald suddenly interrupted their conversation and the wide hall immediately fell silent. On the head of the hall was a wide podium with several empty thrones. Now a regal-looking man, with a solemn and stately expression stepped upon it. On the first look, the garments he wore had nothing fancy to them. However, under the blacksmith's eyes Seth could see that at least the crown and his accessories were legendary. Most likely the whole outfit was. A procession of princes and princesses followed him to man the thrones in the back. A beautiful woman, probably the Empress, sat on the second to highest throne, while the Emperor stepped forward to hold a speech. Nobles, statesmen, and visitors from other worlds, I welcome all of you. You all have come here, because of the great evaluation of the latest generation of worlds. It seemed that the Chona Empire classified the worlds added to the patchworks in generations of 5 years. The current generation had 25 worlds, of which the 5 most recent would be taking part. The evaluation itself was a quest, whose specifics would only be revealed on the day of departure, which was tomorrow. We will send the brave heroes on their quest for this year's evaluation. Depending on their performance we will decide the future direction concerning their worlds. A murmur went through the crowd. The departure date seemed quite close and sudden. It was hard to guess what the Emperor intended by setting it this soon. Princess Lena beside him also seemed shocked at the short preparation time. From their reaction, Seth could guess that there would normally be more time for the participants to prepare and spend time in Krina. Without further ado, I declare the official start of the banquet. Please enjoy the rest of the evening, he said with a smirk. He seemed quite happy with the crowd's reaction. Please excuse me, Seth, I have to go somewhere urgently. With that the princess ran off. The group of Elsa, Marcel, Brock, Lydia, Mike, Mina, Ellie and Finn had paused their crusade on the buffet for a moment to listen to the speech. They were too far away to really see the Emperor, but thanks to arcane sound design they could easily hear him. Mina's ear flopped down when she heard that Seth was already going to leave tomorrow. No need to be upset, we can keep watching the broadcast. Finn comforted her. You still have tonight to make some memories. Thanks, Finn. You are right. Hey, why am I left out? I'm also going. Ellie looked up from her food. She had not paused to listen at all. We will watch and cheer on everyone. Mina also included Marcel, Elsa and Brock at the side with a smile. The mood was good, and they had just turned back to the buffet when they heard a voice from behind. Look at them, the banquet was just opened, and they are already pigging out on the buffet. They heard a haughty voice behind them. Who let that filthy beastman in here, to begin with? A second voice added. They turned around and saw a group of nobles nearby. Mina had almost forgotten that discrimination against her people existed. In Delta were a lot of people who admired and envied beast people. Despite the Empire's ban on such practices, human supremacy was a common thing in many territories and provinces. The imperial censors couldn't be everywhere. This was an official event and even the Emperor participated. The cat girl decided not to make a scene and tried to ignore them. She even signaled the others to stand down. However, it was not up to her. HOH, what are you glaring at, little kitty? Did you think expensive clothes could hide your ugly origins? If you wanted to try and fit in, you should have cut off those filthy animal ears. One of the women approached her when she noticed her initial glare. Ah, what? Did the cat get your tongue? Or did you realize that you don't belong here? The woman suddenly poured her glass of champagne over Mina's head. If you understand, you should. Ellie. A resounding slap hit her cheek so hard, that her voluminous lips burst. You bitch! Do you filth have any idea who I am? A backhand slap hit the other cheek. Two deep red handprints were slowly tuning darker as the woman fell back into the arms of her associate. How dare you? The men behind caught the woman and hollered. They! As expected of a dirty beast, the woman's companions exclaimed. Barbaric! They really don't belong in society. Bah! Beasts stay beasts. Their only worth is as slaves, a noble behind commented. It's on! Finn called out, ready for a brawl. But Ellie had already rushed off, jumped on a guy's shoulder and started choking him with her thighs, while ramming her elbow in his face with maniacal laughter. After a moment of shock, the fairy brute laughed out and joined the fray. You beasts! One of them called out and equipped a sword. He proceeded to attack Mina, who had only watched in shock as Ellie turned a person's face into a bloody mess. Other lackeys followed his example and brought out weapons. Ah, you should have done that. Finn mumbled. The next moment, a flame explosion occurred in the back and a burning man flew past her. Mike had let the chance slip away and protected his sister using the flaming fury. Since the opponent had drawn their weapons, the same happened on their side. The other side were no weaklings and a heated battle ensued. The group around Marcel could only stare, not knowing what to do, as the situation escalated, and more people started joining the fight. Mostly otherworlders who showed little care to the time and place of the fight. What they? Stop! The hero was attracted by the commotion. He and Rich stood at the edge of the wide circle of bystanders who simply watched the chaos unfold. The battlefield was centered around the buffet and many waited for the commotion to end, so they could get some food. His face fell when he recognized members of his group fighting in the chaos. We are using skills now? Don't come whining to me later! Ellie shouted. She had left a trail of unconscious meat piles behind when she faced someone using sword skills against her. Acid punch! She ducked away under a sword strike and punched his abdomen with her hand fist covered in bright green goo. Thunder strike! She followed up with her other hand, clad in a bright blue slime. Lightning arcs covered the twitching man, as he fell to the ground, paralyzed. Ellie proceeded to sculpt his face to her preferences. A female with cat ears kept vanishing and appearing from shadows in quick succession. Wherever she appeared she would strike someone's weak spot, rendering them incapable to fight, or giving an ally the chance to do so. Similar scenes were seen, wherever the members of Minas Mar were fighting. Marcel, Elsa, and Brock had also joined, though they were not as freely roaming the battle, each locked in a fight with a worthy opponent. How dare they abuse their power for wanton slaughter? Hurry, we have to stop them and apologize, the hero told Rich. What? You don't even know. The hero's burning eyes made him stop talking. Fine. The hero and the slave Menser joined the skirmish at the buffet to stop the rampage. Chapter 410. Star-breaking kick. The clouds of battle and the light of skills could be seen even from the throne podium. The Empress sighed. Why does this have to happen every time? The Emperor on the other hand grinned gleefully. What are you even saying? This is bound to happen when people of power and different cultures clash. When will you stop this? Why would I? This is great entertainment. I want to see how it play out. What if something happens? Don't worry, my Empress. From what I can see, the stronger party makes sure not to kill anyone. Mina had just appeared behind a female warrior who gave Brock trouble when she felt a dangerous presence approach from behind. She ducked away to dodge the swipe of a single-edged blade. It was a young man with black hair and a solemn expression. Obediently surrender and stop fighting. I am sure we can sort things out then. As he talked, Mina evaded an attack from the female warrior and struck back. I told you to stop fighting. Dave Fuke, are you even talking about? Should I let myself get killed? Mina aggressively shouted back and vanished in a shadow. Brock. At least you should. Shut up. I'm having a hard time surviving over here. How about you help me instead? If you won't listen, then the hero started attacking Brock with the back of his katana. What are you doing? On the other side of the battlefield, Rich and his slaves had joined the battle, only to face Ellie and Finn. The laughter of the fiends struck terror in their hearts as they brought mayhem onto them. No. 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 Rich kept screaming as he blocked Ellie's punches. Come on. I will restructure your face just a little bit. I am sure we will get along a lot better then. Enemies of Ellie, are enemies of Finn, they heard the tiny brute as they mopped up the slave Menser's followers. Everything was accentuated by the muffled sound of demonic moths that wreaked havoc among the people. After putting Brock out of commission, Ben Harker continued to chase Mina. In his opinion, the assassin was the biggest reason the fight continued. Even though he was stronger than the cat girl, it was hard to catch her, as she skillfully used and created shadows to evade him. While the hero managed to dispatch Marcel, who was the second who refused to stop fighting in the middle of a match, he suddenly faced Mike. Honoring his class as a sword demon, he matched the hero in a sword fight. Still, Mike had already fought for some time and could not keep up in the end. They are quite promising. To be able to put up a fight against someone with the hero class. Especially their equipment, it's above average. How long do you think the fight will keep going? The Queen asked bored. I guess it will end soon. The hero seems intent on striking down his own teammates. Hilarious, isn't it? Whatever. Oh, the Emperor suddenly exclaimed. Why don't you use the shadows? Did your mana run out? The hero shouted incensed. Most people were already unconscious. Only Rich and his people were still fighting seriously. He had been running after her and felt like playing whack-a-mole the whole time. Now it seemed that this chase would finally have an end. I got you now. Suddenly, the cat girl ran past someone and hid behind them. You think you can hide behind a bystander? Out of the way, sir. However, his sword was caught mid-swing by a bare hand, clad in bright flame. The next moment a heavy boot rammed into his abdomen. It triggered a shockwave that shot him back and threatened to pulverize every bone in his lower body. Despite his pain resistance, physical damage resistance, and mag damage resistance, the hero sank to his knees and threw up. It was a critical hit. What dirty tactics, he moaned. Looking up he faced a fiery pair of pupils and watched as his beloved katana was engulfed in flames and turned to a puddle of molten metal on the floor. Ding! You have gained the skill Pain Resistance Leave 1. Seth endured the pain of his forearm shattering when he caught the sword's back with his hand. It was secondary and drowned in his anger to see someone harming his people and trying to hurt his girlfriend. In a fury, he instinctively kicked the hero with his disruptor boots. He aimed for a star-breaking kick, but missed the hero's balls, hitting his abdomen. Ding! Your title Burning Savage has improved. Plus 1,5% crit chance when fighting dirty. The golden fleece immediately healed his broken arm. Mina, are you okay? He asked the out-of-breath cat girl. Yes, thanks to you. He beat up the others. Seth saw Lydia, Mike, Elsa, Marcel, and Brock on the ground. Finn and Ellie were still up. "You bitch! Who allowed you to touch my people?" he hollered, throwing the half-molten bits of the sword in the direction of the hero. The drops hit some unconscious people on the ground, giving them a rude awakening. "I just tried to," he moaned. "Tried to what? Suck up to a bunch of trash from another world? Take some petty revenge because I called your values stupid." They were beating those weaker than them. "Oh, and that means they were in the wrong. It's wrong for the strong to beat the weak." Seth could help but punch him, hurting his hand in the process. "Stop dreaming. It doesn't matter how strong they are. If they deserve a beating, they deserve it. How did something like you become a hero? Watch, I will show you how to deal with this correctly." Finn. Yes. Hers and Ellie's fight with the slave Mancer had ended when Seth entered the battlefield and floored the hero. "What happened? Some woman approached us and suddenly started calling Mina and Mike dirty and filth. Then she poured her drink on Mina's head and dress," the fairy reported. Seth listened expressionlessly. "And then? Mina slapped her. And then? The nobles started calling her a beast and only worth to be a slave. And what did you do then?" "We beat the shit out of them," the fairy brute reported proudly. "Excellently done. Did you listen? This is a perfect execution of justice. Now, Finn, where are those people?" The hero had to watch as the fairy led the blacksmith to the unconscious perpetrators. "Critical hit. Critical hit. Stop that. How can you hit unconscious people? Is this your justice?" the hero cried in dismay and tried to stand up. "What? No, I call it venting. Punching you hurts, so I've chosen softer punching bags." Seth was already done when Ben overcame his trauma and rose back to his feet. The hero could only watch him leisurely going around, feeding healing potions to his friends. "What about the other people? You should heal them, too." "Like hell, I would. If you feel so bad for them, you heal them." Seth scoffed. The hero really did start fiddling around with small vials of the potion he took from his inventory. "That won't be necessary. The imperial family will take care of the injured," one of the princes who had sat on the podium interjected. He had come over to deal with the aftermath, following the emperor's order. Seeing the staff take care of the injured, the hero found the time to mourn his sword. It had been a unique katana that dealt additional damage based on his virtue stat. "We will provide you a substitute for the evaluation, Mr. Hero. Actually, there was a very interesting one being researched at the Imperial lately," the prince promised. "I know which one you are thinking about. Don't try it." Lena suddenly interjected. Originally, she would have no place to talk here. The descendants that sat together with the emperor were those who had a right to the throne, unlike her who could at most inherit a kingdom or province. And why would that be so, Lena? Because the owner had already come to retrieve it. "Oh, I'm sure if I have a word with the owner, he will lend it to the hero." "Oh, really? Then you can ask him yourself," she said with a smirk and pointed at Seth, who was currently talking with Mina. The face of the prince fell. Who would have thought the owner was the man who just had an altercation with the hero? Still, a hero was a great asset. If he managed to play a role in recruiting him, it was worth some embarrassment. "My dear friend, I'm Prince Hardwig Grina. Lena told me, you are the owner of that special sword at the Institute. Would you do me a favor and lend it to the hero for the duration of the evaluation? You did destroy his original weapon after all." "What? Hell no. Although I did that weapon on a whim, I would rather destroy it than giving it to that steaming pile of..." Okay. But did I hear right, you made it?" Hardwig asked in surprise. Lena, that little witch, had not mentioned that. "Yeah, not a big deal. If it's necessary I can give that idiot a substitute, but I did seem to remember that the imperial family was going to give him one." Yes. You don't have to worry." He hurriedly got away from Seth and found Lena. "Why didn't you mention that he was the maker? That was so embarrassing. One had to know, a hero was a strong subject, but they were not too rare. There were always more than enough people that could fight. Scouting a talented crafter, on the other hand, was a much bigger achievement. A hero was worth 100 elite soldiers, but a master blacksmith could make elite soldiers. Now, thanks to her little prank, he had an awkward first impression with a promising craftsman. "You just answered your question, brother," she answered with an impish smile. Chapter 411. Kavati Coan. A wave of relief washed over Seth when it seemed that there would be no problem from the Empire's side. Seth had just acted on impulse, carried away by his anger. The moment this power dwindled, his heart fell to his feet. He did his best to speak calmly and confidently when facing the imperial prince, but inside he was shaking. He was clear that the empire was not a place he could offend easily. Especially not on their turf. Still, his tongue slipped when it came to the sad excuse of the hero. Seeing him heave a deep sigh after the situation came to an end, Mina grasped his arm and smiled up at him. "My hero," she said with a chuckle. "Well, I guess we got away with it for now. But you should be careful if you want to stay here once I left. Who knows what kind of people you just made enemies of. Don't worry about us. We will stay with the princess. You know how much she dotes on Finn. That only leaves for me to worry about that dumb guy." Everyone was tired after this evening's exercise, so they decided to leave the party early and spend their last evening together at their mansion. Although Seth had felt a little guilty for pulling Elsa, Marcel, and Brock into their business, those three happily joined them in their private party and boasted about their own achievements at the Battle of the Buffet. Later that night. "Lena, right? Tell me, who was the lad that managed to land a blow on the hero? He belongs to your people, right?" "Yes, father. He, Seth Smith, is a well-known blacksmith in Delta. He must be a promising blacksmith if you chose him for the evaluation party. There is more than meets the eye, yes. If only he joined as a blacksmith. I see, he's also responsible for that sword, correct? How did you know?" "Lena, I am the emperor. There are no secrets before my eyes." "Of course. What role will he take during the evaluation?" "He is the bard of the party." "The bard? Are you sure?" "I was also unsure, but I heard him play and I have reason to believe in his ability. The world we are sending the teams this time is quite special. As is the objective of this time's quest." The emperor slid a few papers over the table towards Lena. The princess looked at them confused before her face turned to surprise and a little shock. "Are you serious? And the objective, is that true?" "Yes. Our best clairvoyants have confirmed it. But why not send some of our experts?" The emperor only answered with solemn silence. "You don't trust them with this." "Not just that. Many of them are under surveillance. If I were to send them, others would become suspicious. The examinees on the other hand won't arouse any attention." "Right. But why tell me? You are not the only one I'm telling. The world this time is quite dangerous. I thought you might be able to drop some hints to the promising seedlings, so we don't pointlessly lose someone." She fell silent to process the information for a moment. "I will do so, father." Krina was bustling even more than usual after the emperor's announcement in the evening. Reporters and broadcasters hurried to bring the news to the people as quickly as possible. Today, the great evaluation would begin, and everyone was filled with excitement and panic. It was the first time that the evaluation would begin right after the welcoming banquet. While the content-hungry masses were raving in excitement, the media was scrambling over the broadcasting rights. Channel directors had already arrived in the middle of the night to negotiate with the imperial princes. The group from Earth was a hot commodity after a few of them had revealed their prowess during the banquet. Early in the morning, Seth had gotten a visit from Princess Lena. She came with a warning and a long package. Following her warning, he did not return to the embrace of his girlfriend but made some impromptu preparations. Now, they were standing in a hall with a great portal in the back. It was a teleportation formation for the pathwork like it existed in every system church but in the shape of a big ring standing upright. The participants of the evaluation were standing in the hall, divided into groups depending on their origin. At the front of every group stood the royal who recommended them. Like their own group, most of them were made up of roughly team members. The participants were not allowed to bring any followers. Seth recognized some people from the banquet. One or two had been among the unconscious people, others were among the spectators. All kinds of small golems were flying around the hall. Seth could identify them as recorders, golems used to record and transmit images and sound. The by far most common design were mechanic eyes that hovered above their heads. Everything was broadcasted to the Empire. The Emperor entered the stage in front of the teleport gate and began his speech. He once again welcomed them and explained the proceedings of the evaluation. A quest would be given, that the participants would compete to solve. During the whole time, they would be monitored by the Empire through personal recorders. The team would be judged based on their performance. The team to succeed with the quest will be granted additional rewards and I will grant them one wish. Lena had already explained to them that except for the rewards negotiated with their local ambassador, they could also gain additional rewards from the broadcasting stations and the imperial family. The broadcasters were required to share part of the broadcast's revenue with the participants. The Empire's remuneration was based on their performance in that world and the worth of the information they delivered. Those who finished the quest could even get a wish from the Emperor. A wish from the Emperor of Krna could encompass almost anything. The winning team could easily become royalty, maybe even marry into the imperial family. The faces of the crowd brightened hearing about the rewards. However, rewards came with a price. The evaluation was not just based on their fighting prowess, and it also did not completely depend on the quest. They could also earn contributions by finding valuable information about the world and its resources. Another thing was that, after a strict revision, their adventures would be broadcasted to the whole empire. In a sense, it was a fantastic reality TV show. Seth already knew most of this from the time they spent in Krna. While the Empire streamed a feed that was shifted by 24HR, there would be all kinds of stations and channels running highlights and recaps. This was the biggest reason he had decided to hide most of his secrets, the moment Mina had mentioned something in this direction. Even if it was publicized after a strict revision, Seth didn't want to share his secrets with the world. They were not given any official clues about the world they would travel to, except for the name Kavati Coan. Universal Translation translated this to something like Eternal Spring. Although they would be given the quest, the goals of the quest would not be disclosed until they had reached their destination. The guard will now distribute a talisman for everyone. Through it, we can monitor your vitals, but you are not obligated to wear them after you arrived. It acts as a spatial chain that will keep your teams together. Without such a measure, the teams could be split up and spread all over the world. The talismans would guarantee that the members of a team would arrive at the same location, while the system god's randomization would distribute the teams across the world. It was up to their luck, where they ended up. In case of an emergency, they were permitted to use home call to return to Krna. Obviously, it would disqualify them from the quest and any additional rewards. Without further ado, receive the quest and be on your way. All participants saw the same vision of a ruin at the bottom of a cliff, with the waves of an ocean gently washing over them. Ding! A new quest had been generated. Quest, Dragon Doom. Difficulty, A. Krna Empire's best clairvoyant, Harlan See-Through, had the vision of a dragon skeleton after the pathway to Kavati Coan was opened. According to his vision, the bones are located in an eon-old dragon abode, below the ruin of a great citadel at the cliffs of an ocean shore. Find the citadel. Retrieve the dragon bones. Requirement, return to Krna with the dragon bones. Rewards, a wish from the Emperor. Do you accept the quest? Dragon bones? What was a dragon? Real dragons were legends or even myths that rivaled gods. Any part of a dragon was at least a legendary material. Even just the millennia-old nail clippings of a dragon were worth a fortune, not to mention a skeleton. No wonder they were not willing to disclose this information beforehand. They would probably also censor anything pertaining to the goal before airing the recordings. If this got out, any major power with access to the pathworks would flock to Kavati Coan to get their hands on the bones first. There was no guarantee that there were no other powers looking for it already. Now, it also made sense why the Emperor rushed the departure. Seth had not long to think about that, as they were ushered to enter the gate. Each participant was trailed by their personal recorder, that had the common eyeball design. Besides the personal recorder, there were also a few that followed the group itself for other perspectives. Seth looked back one last time. Mina, Finn, and his friends were standing in the crowd. Then he stepped through the portal and into a new adventure. Chapter 412. Kavati Coan, 2. The party from Earth stepped out onto a dry plain covered in dead dry grass and crumbly earth. Grim sunlight burned on their skin, the moment they traversed the portal. It was just like the princess had told them. Kavati Coan was hated by its own sun. The people of this world had angered their sun god, who proceeded to eradicate almost all life on this world. Like in Earth, which had been heading to complete destruction, the system god had intervened, turning the world from an inhabitable desert into a purgatory that still allowed for life, at a terrible price. The people of this world were cursed to live in darkness. If they dared to step into the sun, they would be scorched comparable to the undead. Additionally, every 12 days there would be a blood sun that would curse any living thing it shined upon. The curse of the sun god would turn any creature into a terrible abomination, intent on seeking out and killing any living being it could find. While the people were cursed to avoid the sun, it showered everything with overwhelming malice, turning the once fertile world into a wasteland. Within moments the team members except for Seth, Ellie, and the older gentleman started blushing and sweating. Even the mist demon had a hard time hiding his discomfort. The hero handled it the best but didn't look too comfortable. She herself was not much better off. The heat stagnated under her heavy hood and the light burned on her exposed hands. "Elsa, this one is for you. And here is one for Marcel and one Brock," she heard someone say in the back. Cade, the Rakshasa, turned around and saw Seth, occupied with distributing something to some of the team members. Upon closer look, they were rings. When did that man start handing out free gifts? Except for the radar, she saw no need to buy any items from him, but she heard that he was rather rigorous about not giving stuff for free. She still wore the equipment bought in Y-City and did not expect epic items to make a big difference to her. Seeing the obvious relief on their faces when they wore the rings, made her doubtful. What were those rings to simply alleviate the sun's wrath? She was deliberating when Seth also approached her. "Here, have one, too. Try to channel your mana into it," he said and handed her a small golden band. It was a simple ring, with a complex pattern covering the surface. She had free spots since she only owned one ring herself. Curious, she equipped the present. The constant pressure, burning, and heat from the sun immediately shrunk to a tolerable level. Something like this was possible with good items? Seth could only shake his head after stepping under the sun. Unlike an ordinary sun, this one really kept bombarding the world with light and fire attribute damage. Whatever these people have done, that sun god is completely bonkers, he thought to himself. That guy was frying a whole world, just because he felt offended for something. Whatever they did, this god is seriously furious. Puffles commented grave. As the divine being of Ivice, similarly a god of the sun and sky, he might be the one who understood the situation the best. What exactly happened was not in the information the princess had given them. It also was not really important for their mission. After Lena told him about the permanent dual attribute damage, the blacksmith had prepared these rings. They were rare rings of fire and light protection he had made the night before, after Lena's visit. Seth seldomly bothered with defensive enchantments, since their use was too narrow in his opinion. It was just his preference. He had used a bar of celestial bronze to make several rings and engraved them with fire and light resistance enchantment. The only effects were plus 25% fire affinity, plus 100% fire resistance at the cost of 50 mana per minute, and plus 50% light resistance at the cost of 150 mana a minute. The effect of his traitkin of fire was very visible from the effects, as those were technically the same enchantments. One increased the wearer's light resistance by half, while the other outright doubled it. Seth himself did not need it, as he was not affected by the sun. His traitkin of fire played a role, but surprisingly, so did the mark of Ivice. With Puffles reaching adulthood, the Ivicer had also gained the knowledge to improve the mark to more than just a stamp of approval. According to the Nightmare Centipede, it was able to increase his resistance against the light element to 35%. It would have been more if Ivice had not vanished long ago. He went ahead and gave everyone a ring. Everyone except the hero, the merchant, and the slave Manser. "What are those rings?" the hero whispered to the mist demon. Ben Harker did not dare to directly ask the blacksmith, who had almost kicked his balls last night. However, the demon only smiled at him in silence. The sly guy would not choose a side in this. Next, the hero approached Yvette, the saintess. She hesitantly answered since he was still the leader chosen by the princess. "They seem to be rings that grant fire resistance. Seth, I know we had our conflict. But if you have already prepared something, you should give a ring to everyone," the hero tried to argue. "Sorry, teacher. I did not bring enough for the whole class," Seth answered with a sweet smile. "It's not like these items grow on trees. Leader, you can't possibly expect a poor bard to procure the whole party's equipment." He emphasized that he was the bard for the camera and brandished his lyre. After all, everything from here on was being recorded. Seth was adamant to play the role of the bard to the end. Though his clothes, except for the demonic skull lyre, would remind more of a mage. He currently wore the latest items made of sky silk. Nico Booz had finished it just before their departure from Delta. Under his golden fleece, he wore the sun shirt and the cloud pants. Although his blacksmith's eyes could not appraise the clothes, Nico had explained them to him. However, for some reason, he withheld the item description. Seth could understand him, the flavor text could often be a little embarrassing for the maker. Sun shirt. Epic. Durability, 1500. Physical defense, 500. Mag defense, 500. One item defense is doubled under a sunny sky. 2 plus 10 to all attributes under a clear sky. 3 plus 50% additional light attribute damage on attacks. 4 25% increased resource regeneration in sunlight. 5 item is immune to fire or light damage. Cloud pants. Epic. Durability, 1500. Physical defense, 500. Mag defense, 500. One item defense is doubled under a cloudy sky. 2 plus 10 to all attributes under a cloudy sky. 3 plus 50% additional defense against light attribute damage. 4 25% increased resource regeneration in cloud shadows. 5 item is immune to fire or light damage. Although their performance was very dependent on external factors, there was nothing to complain about the performance itself. The defense alone was far better than Nadal's set. As one would expect from a divine blueprint. All of it was then again covered by the Sky Robe. Sky Robe. Epic. Durability, 2000. Physical defense, 750. Mag defense, 750. One item defense is doubled under an open sky. 2 plus 30 to all attributes under an open sky. 3 plus 30% additional defense against light/fire/water/ice attribute damage. 4 35% increased resource regeneration under an open sky. 5 magic damage is doubled under an open sky. 6 item is immune to fire or light damage. These times were powerful out on the open, but they all shared a specific condition. And if that was not given, the items would actually be weakened. In caves or indoors with a ceiling above the wearer's head, they would lose 50% of their power. In forests 25%. Even weakened, the pants and shirt were better than his previous items. What really sold the items to him, was that they were all immune to fire damage. Ugh, could you please put me back in the inventory? This place is disgusting. Ounce complained in his hands. I can't, this is the scene of our first arrival in this world. We have to be recognizable as the bard. For the show. Ounce answered theatrically. The hero only humphed at his answer. Anyway. We should introduce ourselves once again and talk about our actions from here on, the hero stated. You know, maybe Hubert could help with the missing equipment, Seth commented after everyone introduced themselves once again. He had noticed that the dimensional merchant was doing just fine and was interested in what the class could do. The gentleman was unperturbed by the sudden mentioning of his name. I'm sorry to inform you, that I currently lack the funds for such an endeavor, he answered politely. We could give you money, the hero stated, causing a nervous reaction from Rich, who was notoriously broke. Seth knew it the best. Most of the money the slave Mansa and his team had made in the last 3 months went into his coffers as payment for equipment. For reasons I do not wish to reveal, that won't work, he said apologetically. Whether it was true or not, it showed that the merchant was not going to save the hero and the slave Mansa from their misery. Okay, let's stop with that topic. We should really talk about how to proceed from here. Isn't he a little petty? Hardwig asked, watching the live feed. Ben and Rich attacked his people last night. It's already good he did not just straight up jump the ship when I told him that Ben would stay the party leader. Lena answered. Did you tell him about the advantages of having a hero as the party leader? Sure. And? He still insisted, and I quote, the idiot would kill them all because his head is just there for decoration. Chapter 413. Homestuck. Krana. Mina, Finn, and the other guests from Minas Mar were all assembled in the living room of their mansion. Wearing casual wear or still in pajamas, they were laying on the couches or carpets of the room, fixedly staring at the screen. Anyone in the Krana, who had a TV, was watching the official broadcast, and Seth's friends were no exceptions. They were already stuck in this situation for almost 2 days, ever since the official broadcast started. Dirty dishes were everywhere, and crumbs of snacks covered the ground. A certain smell was already filling the room, but nobody bothered to leave except to use the toilet or get more food. This was the kind of fascination that spawned from reality TV in a reality where death was a real option. It was not just because they wanted to see how Seth was doing. The Empire's official broadcast was a balanced report of all teams, while different channels focused on certain groups or individuals depending on the rights they managed to negotiate with the royalty. Every hour the official broadcast would restart with an intro to the world. A land cursed by their own god of light. People are forced to live in the shadows or become abominable monsters in the light of the blood sun and roam the land as brainless murder machines. Despite the goal of this evaluations quest being constantly censored, it did not take anything away from the tension. Seth and his group had actually landed in one of the most stable locations. An expansive wasteland or dried up meadows and hills. Being the most stable, also made their journey the most boring. Except for encounters with some disgusting mutations left by the blood sun, they had no problems while trudging along under the hateful sun. The only hook of their situation was whether they could find shelter before the next blood sun, as they had not met any signs of civilization after spending 2 days walking. In stark contrast, other groups were having much greater action and problems. No. Not Hannigan. Finn exclaimed in dismay as a hunter who had left his group for scouting was noticed by a group of abominations and almost brutally mauled to death before he could use home call. Hannigan's group was one of the luckiest and unluckiest ones at the same time. They had appeared in the cellar of a house in the big city. Although they did not meet any people, it meant they had a good chance to find out more about the world and improve their evaluation. That was the lucky part. They were unlucky because most of the city's population had turned into abominations and had long killed the rest. These abominations were nothing to scoff at. Looking like desiccated corpses with black skin like coal, they were extremely nimble, fast, and strong. Mina was probably the most agile of their group and even she was not sure whether she would be able to do more than run away. The hunter had been unlucky to get surrounded in the narrow alley of the big city. As tragic as his disqualification was, it made that group's further story even more interesting. The hunter had gone missing while scouting. How would they react? The truly cursed quality of the evaluations broadcast was that all groups were similarly strong and interesting, and people were hard-pressed to keep up with everything. Anybody who could, would suddenly start living in front of the TV and spend as much time as possible watching the broadcasts, similar to Mina and the others. After showing Hannigan's demise, the broadcast cut to Seth's group. Kavati Coan. Except for Seth, the hero, the merchant, and the demon also had the map skill. Despite it only giving them the rough outline of the continent they had landed on, it was enough to decide their next steps. They were currently situated on an elongated continent that ran diagonally from northwest to southeast. Most settlements were at rivers or shores. The citadel was supposed to be located at the shore. To reach the shore and find a settlement, it was decided to go east and follow the foothills of a short mountain range. Judging by the distance and their speed, it would only take 4 days to reach the shore. Seth enjoyed the role of the bard. He simply walked along and sang hiking songs that slightly helped with their stamina but were more to alleviate the boredom. Maybe we should rest over there. It seems to be a cave at the cliff over there. Rich said fatigued. He lacked the power of the hero and had no equipment, so he was suffering the most under the sun. The Saintess was kind enough to bless him periodically, but that could only help so much. At least there were few monsters in this terrible environment. The only bigger thing they had encountered so far was a desert kraken. Since they usually lived below ground, it was not bothered in the least by the sun's wrath. It could have had a long life if it had not decided to attack a stressed hero. Using the sword given by the Imperial Prince, Ben easily cut the kraken into bite-sized chunks. This world was in a situation similar to Earth, and the monsters were tremendously strengthened. Despite that, they stood no chance against the cheat existence that was the hero. One could argue that all members of their team were special with 1 or 2 cheats. It was the same for any other team sent here. Still, a hero was the most broken out of all of them, when it came to individual combat strength. While Seth made sure to relax in the back, the hero was leading in the front wearing thick and heavy armor while enduring the sun's bombardment. The blacksmith had to admit that Ben Harka's equipment was not bad. The hero was decked out in epic and unique items from dungeons. Although it could not compare to a well-thought-out epic setup from Seth, it was probably the best one could get by dungeon diving alone. We could rest there for the day and continue walking during the night, the demon suggested. Aside from the demon, Mistopheles, Yvette the Saintess, Hubert the merchant, and Elsa agreed with his idea. Especially Rich was looking forward to a break. Unlike Seth who had distributed his stats evenly or the vanguards, they were all casters who focused on attributes like intelligence and willpower. Although they did not suffer from the sun, as Rich did, they had a hard time keeping up with the physical strain of their travel. If you guys accepted Rich's contract, we would be faster, and you would have fewer problems, the hero complained. We already had that topic. I'm not gonna become someone's slave. Even if it's just temporary. Ellie shouted agitated. Although nobody else spoke up, Elsa, Yvette, and Brock nodded in silent agreement. The contract may have been just a formality without any strings attached, but especially these four were fundamentally against the idea. Others like Seth also preferred not to do it and rather stood on the sidelines. Really in favor of the idea were only Ben and Rich. Which ended the whole conversation in, not unless there was no other choice. Rich could still use his support skills on them, they were just weakened. Fine, let's take a rest in the cave and continue in the night. Everyone let out a sigh of relief as they escaped the burning sun and entered the cool shadows of the cave. Seth frowned a little since he lost a lot of buffs from his sky silk clothes indoors, but he didn't complain. Ellie suddenly ran into the cave as if she noticed something. Her excited call echoed back to them. Hey! It's a dungeon! They followed the quirky slime rancher. On the way in, Seth noticed tracks of something being dragged out. Looking at the other, he was not the only one to notice. At the back of the tube-shaped cave was a big gate. The rough natural rock wall ended in a brick wall made of big yellowish sandstone blocks. Rows of columns lined the wall, and two big braziers illuminated the mysterious door. The area in front of the gate was strewn with leftovers from camps. Burned down fires, dilapidated and broken tents, old bags, and garbage. Everything was covered in a layer of fine dust and sand. In this type of climate, they had no idea for how long the area had been abandoned. Seeing that there are traces of human presence, it could mean that there might be a settlement in the area, the merchant pondered. Should we enter? Marcel asked. The entrance to the dungeon indicated that it was not small at all. Most of the party members were in the early to mid-60s while the dungeon looked like it could easily go up to level 80 or even up to 100. It was not impossible, but it was not necessarily part of their mission and would take time. However, a dungeon could be a great resource for the Krona Empire and bring bonus points for the evaluation. The hero looked around the group. We will rest first and then take a look. Let's decide afterward. Chapter 414. Catacombs. Krona. In a tiny office filled with stacks of papers, Sean McLeary looked at the screen in front of him, almost crying in joy. Finally, the group from Earth was doing something. At his digression as the channel director, they had spent most of their dwindling funds on the exclusive rights for some of the members from Earth. Especially those that had caused a commotion during the banquet. They lacked the funds to compete for the hero. But they had found out about the guy who kicked the hero and shamed him in public. They paid a fortune only to find out, they bought the right for the bard. And something like a slime tamer. To make things worse, they had been going through a boring wasteland for the past 2 days. This was their last attempt to get the struggling channel back on track. If this failed, he would have to take responsibility in front of the stakeholders. He was ready to succumb to his fate when they encountered him. A big one. He prayed to the 9 divines they would enter the place, and his prayer came true. The director called all the editors and screenwriters, all 4 that were left, for a joint sighting of the material sent by the Imperial Broadcast Station. This Ellie is not bad, her skills are interesting, and her fight is wild. But this bard? Why did we spend a lot of money? Because our informant said he was the one who made the hero kneel. Sean answered, also rather unsure about their investment. I mean, he's doing his job as a bard, but... yeah, he's rather ordinary, isn't he? Except for the beginning when he suddenly started handing out rings, he stayed silent. The party from Earth slowly made their way through the dungeon hall, which resembled a high temple of some evil idol or false god. A pack of disfigured ghouls around level 67 was besieging the party. Everyone fought valiantly and showed an interesting array of skills, except for the bard. The only thing special about him was the eccentric instrument he used. He sang ordinary songs to buff his allies or hinder the ghouls. Sorry, Chief. Looks like that one is a dud. Maybe. Or he's hiding his skills. What makes you think that? Just because you are desperate, you shouldn't become delusional, one of the editors joked with a chuckle. Answer me this, if he was this ordinary, why would he be recommended for the evaluation? You are right. That is indeed weird. However, you are not wrong. Even if he is hiding his skill, he is unusable until he reveals himself. Maybe we could salvage some of the shots from his perspective and make something interesting centered around the girl. He's always in the rear, giving a good view of the battle. Maybe we could sell some of the shots to other channels, too. Not a bad idea. It was true, Seth held back and did the least he had to do, to count as a bard. Singing some common songs, he had learned from Ounce. The ghouls were quite strong and numerous but posed no danger to their kind of overpowered party. There was no need for Seth to show any prowess in this situation. It was similar for Yvette, Elsa, and the others in the rear guard. It was mostly the vanguard getting some action. After defeating the ghouls, they continued deeper into the abyss, all the while being amazed by what they had found. The whole of the temple seemed to be a temple, or maybe it was an expansive burial structure before the dungeon grew in it. Past the massive wave of ghouls, the opponents became sparser. Mostly undead like mummified soldiers wearing a sword and armor of great antiquity. They would turn to dust once they were defeated. From the second floor onward, the dungeon turned into a complicated labyrinth of halls, tunnels, and alcoves. The next floors of these catacombs were filled with large crates, most of the crates were empty. In the bottom of one of the larger crates lay a humanoid creature, a human soldier, desiccated and rotten. Some of the corpses would rise or break out from the crates when they heard the group approach. "Hey, take a look at this!" Misto called the group. 2 large pools of bright red liquid decorated the floor around him. Was this fresh blood? What was going on? The entrance had no sign of anyone entering recently, so where would the fresh blood come from? "It's definitely blood," Kate suddenly commented with absolute certainty. It seemed like had her fair share of experience with this topic. "I can smell more in that direction," she added and pointed down one of the many hallways. "Lead the way." "Maybe there is a survivor," the hero said determinedly. They followed the girl with the hood as she led them through several halls and burial chambers. She abruptly stopped moving. "It's..." Suddenly they heard the sound of rocks rumbling in the tunnel. They quickly fled to the other side of the room, just as a massive rock slab crashed to the ground and left a gaping hole behind it. Just as they were almost crushed in the falling rock, the group sprinted to the far side of the room to evade it. Now a giant stone slab blocked their only way in or out, as the chamber was a dead end. "Shit, old man! Weren't you looking out for traps?" Marcel shouted at the dimensional merchant. The old gentleman had been acting as their thief because his monocle was able to see through traps. "Language, my young friend. This stone slab is not a trap, so my monocle could not detect it." "It's not a trap. It was him," the hooded girl said and pointed at a sarcophagus. A thin trail of blood could be seen at the rim. "Who are you people?" a voice asked after the stranger realized that they knew about his presence. Inside the sarcophagus lay a man. He was badly injured, but alive. Seth determined that this man was around 35 years old and, judging by the coat of arms on his weapons and armor, a member of a knight's order. The man was breathing deeply and gasped when he spoke to them. "Know that I am a knight of the Knights of the independent city of Ahaz. I am here under the order of the Lord of Baram, the guardian of this catacomb." "Guardian of the catacomb?" the hero asked perplexed. "That doesn't matter. Why did you lock us up?" Seth stepped forward and tapped the hero's shoulder. "Talking should be left to the bard. This is not an interrogation, don't you see he is severely wounded? How about Yvette healing him before we keep talking?" he suggested amicably. This was the first person they met, and they were lucky enough that he was not a nobody. As a knight, he should have had information on what was going on, at least in this region. "You should let me heal him. I am a lot better than her," Tatzel said eagerly from his pet space. "I know, but I don't want to reveal you yet, leave it to the priestess." Yvette was the saintess of Samhach, god of repose and stagnation. Healing was not her specialty, however, she still rivaled most high priests. The Imuji's disdain said more about its own prowess than that of the saintess. "How about you leave the talking to the bard?" Seth whispered his suggestion to the hero. He didn't wait for Ben's answer though and approached the man while Yvette was healing him. The hero could only clench his fist, but ultimately let it go. "Greetings, we are visitors from a foreign world and mean no harm. We entered this cave to seek shelter and stumbled over your catacomb." "Another world," he looked at the group and contemplated. "It's true, you don't look like any kind of people I know of." Seth didn't even need to use the voice of Seth to give a good impression and make the knight believe him. The effects of his high personality attribute and the necklace of Persephone were more than enough. They quickly entered an amicable conversation about the knight, the territory, and the reason for his presence here. What he told them was quite unfathomable. This dungeon, or catacomb as they called it, was originally the tomb of an ancient pharaoh and the last resting place of his army. A few centuries after it was built, the cult site had turned into a dungeon. Despite being a dungeon, there were no problems. Wazid of Menkor was a powerful god king and kept his sanity with the help of ancient magics and blessings. Even after he rose as an undead dungeon manager, he only wished to protect the descendants of his people. Even after it became a dungeon, pilgrims would come here to perform the rites and show respect to the great pharaoh. When the sun god cursed their lands, it became almost impossible to live on the surface. In their desperation, it was the great pharaoh who provided shelter for the populace inside his catacombs. As for the knight, his name was Ahmed, and he was a messenger between the Lord of Baram who had taken shelter in these catacombs and the city council of Ahaz. Originally, he was on his way back to Ahaz, when the security measures were suddenly activated. The catacombs were normally void of monsters and the old soldiers would stay in their slumber unless there were unauthorized intruders. It was a countermeasure against the abominations that roamed the wastelands. The dungeon creature and soldiers would attack anyone, no matter friend or foe. That was how Ahmed got in the crossfire of their entrance. The party looked a little embarrassed when they realized that it was their fault. Despite it being their fault, the knight politely thanked the saintess after she was done healing. "But why did you activate the trap?" the hero asked peeved. "How would I know whether you were friend or foe? With your strength, it would have been better to sacrifice my waning life to stop you from advancing and cause harm to the citizens." The hero fell silent. Ahmed, who had judged them trustworthy, reopened the chamber by pressing a secret button at the lower corner of the sarcophagus he had been hiding in. Chapter 415. General's Abode. Ahmed had opened the door, but it did not really solve any problems. "We will have to reach the burial chamber of General Haker on the 5th floor. He is the only one on the shallow levels that has the awareness to help us," the knight asserted. "The shallow levels?" the hero inquired. "Ah, yes, the first 30 floors are the defense lines. As long as we can talk to General Haker, we should be able to deactivate the security measures and give you safe conduct to the urban floors." "Wow! How many floors are there, Ahmed?" Ellie asked curiously. "The deepest chamber would be the Pharaoh's on the 103rd floor." It was decided that Ahmed would help them get to the 5th floor and speak with this General Haker to hopefully deactivate the monster spawns. He knew the shorted route. A whole community of survivors was a great chance for their team, and they really wanted to know more about this place and the undead pharaoh that made it all possible. Seth had found out that the Baram was one of the trade cities a few days from here at the coast. Since the city had a harbor, the chance was big that there were a few people with knowledge about the world geography and maybe ruins at the coasts. People like merchants or captains from ships. It was imperative for them to meet these people. Seth was sure they could narrow down the location of the citadel, even if it was just knowing where it wasn't. However, he made sure not to reveal their full intentions to Ahmed. "Say, aren't 30 floors a little much just for defense?" Rich tried to make small talk on the way to the main corridor. "No. Actually, they are currently deliberating to add another 10 floors to the defense line. I heard that an abomination managed to break through during the last Blood Sunday." Everyone thought about their battle with the ghouls. The mummified soldiers were also not weak. These were only the first few floors. "Are there that many of those abominations? Or are they just that strong?" the merchant interjected. He thought the same as anyone else. They had seen almost nothing in the past 2 days. What they met was not worth mentioning. "I can see that you are a little confused. Let me guess, you arrived here in the past 2 or 3 days. The last blood sun was 4 days ago, most creatures in the vicinity had flooded to this place." "They flooded here?" Marcel asked. Ahmed just shrugged. "I don't know how, but the abominations instinctively know where survivors are hiding and storm there to pull them out into the light of the sun. Ahaz almost fell during the last Blood Sunday." He sighed. "I actually came here to ask for help in repair and reinforcement of our defenses. Or at least take some refugees." "Then why are you alone? Did things not work out?" the hero asked concerned. No, our requests were denied." The hero grasped his shoulder reassuringly. "We will help you," he suddenly promised confidently out of nowhere. What was this guy doing? Ha, ha. "Thank you for trying to cheer me up, but you probably have your own things to do. I know you are strong, but I don't think you will be able to do much to help us." At least the knight had some common sense. The group was about to relax when. "Don't underestimate us. We are elites. These ghouls are not even enough for a warm-up. I am sure we can help." Ben insisted. The party could only face palm. Why was he trying so hard? What were they even supposed to help with? It wasn't like they had a legendary carpenter among them. Oh okay, I guess. You can come with me when I return to Ahaz, the knight answered awkwardly. The hero had successfully forced himself onto the poor knight. Whether it was good or bad what the hero was doing, they swaggered down to the 5th floor in a relaxed fashion. Literally, swaggered. The hero was eager to show off his power to grow Ahmed's confidence in him. He simply soloed anything that came their way. The rest of the party had nothing to do. Seth could only shake his head. Depending on what they could find out from the people here, they could have simply followed Ahmed anyway. Why the promise to help? It made the blacksmith suspicious of the hero. He simply didn't know enough about that class, or Ben Harker. Seth was preoccupied with other stuff and neglected to gather information. Now he regretted not taking the time to know more about the party members. It wasn't like he liked putting this much brain power into dealing with others. It was such a pain. How did scheming people do it? In the end, he decided to stop caring for now and see where things would go. It did not take long to reach the boss room. There was no great gate flanked by giant statues or anything similarly imposing as they expected from the surrounding. There was no door at all. They simply entered a wide, well-lit hall with walls lined by richly painted columns. The middle of the room was taken up by a long pool of clear water. At the head of the pool was a throne and 2 weirdly curvy mummies were fanning a giant desiccated man in pompous armor. The empty eye sockets burned with a red light and looked at the intruders disinterestedly. Its deep booming voice reached them all across the room. Ahmed, why are you here again? Are those the people who entered the catacombs without an authorization? The knight from Ahaz stepped forward and explained the situation. The mummy lifted its face pondering after listening to him. Visitors from another world. Are you guaranteeing for them, Ahmed? Yes. And what is your reason for coming to this world? I don't believe you are just here for holidays. It is true, we came to collect information about this world, Ben answered honestly. So you have information about what is happening right now. His Majesty might be interested in talking with you. With a wave of its hand, several tokes were shooting toward the group. Everyone caught one of the projectiles. These will give you free passage down to the shelter. I will return the security measures to stand by for now. Talk with the administrator. I'm sure you can trade information with him. Now leave. They were just about to leave when Seth saw the mummy pull one of his servants onto his lap. He could not help but smirk. This guy was having the time of his life, even after he already died a long time ago. Do you think those mummy girls are still juicy or is their action more on the crunchy side? Ew, Ellie, just you. Seth twitched. What? I'm just curious. It's not like I want to join. Don't end that sentence there. It's not like I want to join. Happy. Yet. The next 25 floors were a bunch of empty halls, burial chambers, and corridors. It was almost eerie to travel through this environment in absolute silence. On the 30th floor, they finally came before an imposing gate. It was flanked by a mix of human and undead guards in sets of ancient armor. Seth couldn't appraise the armor on the undead since it was part of the dungeon mob's body. The armor on the humans on the other hand was a set of rare items. The performance was not bad at all. If they had an army equipped like that, they would be a sizable force. Ahmed? Why are you already back? Did something happen? Yeah, I met these guys when I was almost out. General Haker gave them permission. Everyone showed the token the undead philanderer had thrown at them. The guards nodded and opened the gate. Krana. A dungeon that was used as a shelter for refugees. The population of a whole city living in the bowels of a giant burial chamber. It was a first for all of them. It also caused a minor uproar among the viewership of the Empire. And they, the Krana 5 channel, had the direct conversation from the perspective of Seth, who had led the conversation with the first survivor any team had met yet. Even if they had no broadcasting rights for the more interesting characters of the party, they had the right of the party that first found survivors and a real source of information. Sean's heart jumped in joy. He was starting to have hope for the future. Maybe his decision was right in the end. Chapter 416. The Administrator. It really was a city within a dungeon. A city like an anthill. Narrow hallways and former burial chambers turned into humble abodes, only separated from the bustling corridors by flimsy curtains. It reminded Seth a lot of the Undercity of Aura, though it was arguably still more orderly than the haphazard tunnels the dregs of society had dug into the ground and bedrock. Was this the reason why ancient soldiers were stored in wooden boxes on the upper floors? Because they relinquished their last resting place to the living? Unlike the upper floors, there was light here. Dungeons typically had some kind of magic illumination. It was not out of courtesy for invaders but was the case when the spawned monsters had no night vision. Undead needed no light, so the upper floors were dark, except for some discreetly placed coal basins or braziers. Which brought up the question, was the illumination here really out of consideration for the people, or were these people already part of the dungeon? Seth had heard that some dungeon would lure in and recruit beasts from the outside, but once a creature became part of a dungeon, it would be unable to leave. Looking around, people didn't look too great, but they did not seem to be starving either. The mood among them was good in general, but, did they know? If it was true, it could explain a few things, but... oh well, Seth wasn't even sure whether his doubts were justified. Maybe they weren't part of the dungeon? Or maybe it was an agreement. He kept his thoughts to himself. It was not his place to speak up, for now. One of the guards Ahmed talked to came along to notify the administrator of their arrival. He told them he would bring them to the city where the administrator and the Lord of Baram had their seat. The guard led them to a hidden corner on the floor and down an endless-seeming spiral staircase. It had landings at regular intervals, probably leading to the floors they passed by taking the stairs. Was this part of the original design? Or was it augmented? Seth wouldn't believe for a second that the original tomb had this many floors. Maybe there was a staircase to visit the different tombs, but why would a dungeon need it? Dungeons with this many floors would have teleporters adventurers could use to travel between already visited dungeons. Why was there a hack to skip floors? They only realized what he meant by the city when they reached the 45th floor. OT to be precise, the 45th, 46th, 47th, and 48th floors. The ceiling of these levels had been broken trough, creating an expansive cavern that provided enough space for a townscape. The ceiling of this mega floor was covered by an illusion of the sky, with an artificial sun. Wow! It was not just Ellie who couldn't help but exclaim. Seeing such a picturesque scene after walking through dimly lit catacombs and graves for hours was a true blessing. The narrow alleys here were chock full of people, even worse than on the previous floors they passed. Here were even people on the roof. So many people. Elsa mumbled unwittingly. Many people who have their accommodations on other floors will assemble here for a diversion and to enjoy a few hours of sunlight and implied normalcy, the guard answered with a wry smile. He led them to the tallest building at the center of the townscape. This city hall was where the administrator and the Lord of Baram resided. On the way, he praised the great pharaoh's virtue, as he was so magnanimous as to give them such a place of respite in such dire times. Except for their short walk through the 30th floor, this was their first time to learn more about the daily life in the dungeon. Despite the overarching crisis that befell their world, the people were not too depressed here. The guard would readily explain everything to them. Their food was strictly rationed and spawned from the treasure chests at public food distribution centers. There were several sources of water and public toilets available to the people. The dungeon would take care of any waste and trash by absorbing it. The town hall itself was like an irregular pillar. It was neither pretty nor luxurious. The only fascinating part about it was that it was the only building that seemingly vanished in the sky. The guard explained that it was the only thing left of the structure of the previous floors. Most staircases and boss rooms, which also made it a defense work. If something really broke through this far, it would simply face a row of staircases and boss rooms, without having a chance to enter the town. But why didn't you do this for all populated floors? The merchant voiced a question Seth also had thought about. The guard fell silent and thought for a moment. I don't know. You will have to ask the administrator, was his conclusion. A simple guard was not high enough in the hierarchy to know about things like the restructuring plans for the dungeon. As they got closer, they found that the city hall was surrounded by a moat, filled with water unnatural clarity. A railing kept people from approaching the moat anywhere else but at the drawbridge. Wow, the water is so clear, the Rakshasa girl mumbled. It's not water. That's acid. Ellie commented seriously. Acid? Why would they have a moat of acid? Brock asked interested. It's in case the town hall is overrun, and beasts try to get out. Ahmed finally had the chance to show his knowledge. That is correct. Anything that falls into this acid will be quickly dissolved, only leaving a clear liquid behind, the guard added. Everyone eyed the liquid at the bottom of the moat with a hint of horror. They felt a little queasy crossing the bridge. Please wait here, while I inform the administrator, the guard said, before leaving them behind in the lobby. There were only two silent undead guards, watching them emotionlessly with their red glowing eyes. Let's use this as a break, the hero tried to suggest, but everyone was already in the motion to sit down and rest. Seth and Ellie even bought out some packed lunch from Link, their gourmet hunter. It was normal food without any effects, but the hunter's skill as a chef had made leaps and bounds ever since he did not have to leave the kitchen anymore. Facing the piercing eyes of some party members who were stuck with dry ration, they reluctantly shared some. It took about an hour for the guard to return. He was followed by a servant in an exotic-looking robe, matching the style they had seen on the streets. Greeting visitors. This servant will guide you to the audience chamber. The administrator is awaiting you, he said with a smile and led them up a few shabby stairs. Tisk, tisk, so this is the bunch who killed our ghoul horde. Do you know how much resources it takes to spawn those? A snarky voice greeted them as they entered the room. On the opposite side, on a throne, sat a tall mummy, clad in an emerald robe and a golden headdress decorated with white feathers. Are you the administrator? Ben Harker stepped to the front. Insolent. Speaking to this Grand Vizier like that. Are there no manners where you come from? Although the choice of words was aggressive, the mummy and its voice were calm and rather provocative. I do not know your manner, nor would I follow them to please a dungeon monster. Don't think I can be fooled like them. Ahmed looked at him shocked. MMR Harker, please stop. Yvette tried to interrupt, but a hero can't be stopped. You have imprisoned so many people in this place to harvest their lives. Offering shelter to take advantage of the innocent. As a hero, I can't possibly watch you go on like this. I will kill you and free them of your evil spell. Guys, get ready for a boss battle. What was this guy even saying? Did he know something they didn't? Even if he did, he should have communicated beforehand, because right now, nobody moved, except their palms to their faces. Even Rich, that crocodile bird, that kept sticking to the hero's side, could not but shake his head. What are you doing? I am the party leader. Follow my order and get ready for battle. Again, nobody moved. Everyone did their best in pretending not to know the hero. His party's unwillingness was not enough to stop the hero's rampant sense of justice. Then I will do it myself, he barked and attacked the administrator. The hero's sword was easily deflected by a magic shield without the Grand Vizier moving an inch from his throne. All guard in the tower, human and undead, promptly unsheathed their weapons and assembled in the audience chamber. That was not all, there were another 4 burly undead that were head and shoulders above the rest, each came with a set of elite troops. Now there were 5 dungeon bosses weighing their aura on the hero, fighting his lone battle for justice. The rest of the party had not moved an inch and were surrounded by blades. Even Seth had not expected the situation to go out of control this quickly. Chapter 417. Somewhere else, X. The cold of the mountains became almost unbearable. Delta, sitting atop a volcano, was experiencing a sudden winter, but the chimeras traveling in the mountain were hit by an ice age. One could still not tell whether this was a good or a bad thing. While the troops of Minasmar wore thick coats to not freeze to death, the same was not true for the beasts that constantly invaded. Even Pardo, the orc-headed chimera, was wearing a thick coat on top of his fur and armor. He followed a map drawn by Seth as he and his men trudged through a snowstorm. The snow easily reached up to the 2,5 m tall chimera's hips. Had the blacksmith known about the change in weather conditions after his departure, he would have paused their mission. When they reported to Monique about their current status, they were already closer to their destination, and it was safer to push through than to try and return. Their destination was the place where Seth and the others had once met Nas Coan, after an unfortunate run-in with a bloodthirsty demon. There were 2 reasons the blacksmith had given them the map. The town was close to the planned trade route. Close enough to consider making it a waypoint, if the residents and Nas Coan agreed. The second reason was for an emergency like this. If the chimeras were to get stranded in the mountains because something happened, the town could have been a safe haven to stay and regroup. Another reason it made a good waypoint. That was, of course, only if the settlement still existed. Seth always meant to send back a messenger, but things kept coming up. He didn't have the people or was too busy. Ultimately, he had procrastinated getting in contact with Nas Coan and forgot at some point. He only remembered when thinking about making this trade route. It could bring Nas Coan and the mountain city a lot of advantages. And because of this, the chimeras were currently stuck in a snowstorm. Their camp had been ripped away by the weather and they could only make a dash to cross the rest of the way. It was hard to see through the flurry of snow, but a dim light was visible even from a distance. Wet heavy snow tried to sap away their stamina as they got closer to the glow on the mountain. They could finally recognize what the light was, a great barrier that was covering a whole mountain top. It shone in a warm golden hue, giving a sharp contrast to the desolate ice desert surrounding it. Nearing the shining wall, they could make out a figure approaching them from inside. It was a tall man, with a wide chest. He held a spear in his right hand and held the rein of the woolly rhino he was riding in his left. "I am the chosen of Nas Coan. Travelers, what is your goal in coming here?" he asked in a clear voice, ignoring the cold winds ripping at his clothes. "Primarily a place to warm up and maybe a cup of tea." Pardo answered, trembling from the cold. "I see, are any of you wounded, or sick?" "No, just freezing." Finally, a small smile could be seen on the man's face. "Then come in and warm up. We can talk over a hot cup of tea." "Beta. What do you mean we don't have enough troops?" "Get more from Theta." He needed to catch the people fleeing across the mountains in the northeast but constantly lacked the people to do so. "My prince, there are none left," the advisor answered worriedly. "What do you mean?" the crown prince asked disgruntled. "You have already funneled all forces from Petalusia Minor to Petalusia Magna," after Prince Muir's departure the troubled mareman explained. "Then where are they?" the prince barked. I have no explanation, my lord. None of the companies we sent north returned. Great parts of our army are bound by Adam's insurgents in the west. Overall, people just keep disappearing. Then what am I supposed to do? We can't just let the population run. I beseech you to support the construction of the teleport gate as quickly as possible. Once we can get reinforcements, we can chase the refugees." "Fine. Do it. Get me more troops. Find out what is going on in the north. Now, get out of my sight. God damn it." The crown prince was having a hard time. The elders had given him plenty of troops and authority to pacify the place called Beta, by the natives. His soldiers went missing, the population was mostly gone, and some stupid mutation was leading a rebellion, wrestling away control. How were these easy achievements? It was a tremendous headache. He might even fall out of favor for this. "My prince! You have to flee," the advisor suddenly charged into the temporary office. He was covered in blood and missing an arm. "What is going on? Where are the guards?" the crown prince jumped up from his seat. "We have no time, sir. They are after your life." "Who? Me?" the advisor's eyes suddenly glowed red. He had used the injury to get closer, now he stabbed a dagger in the crown prince's gut. "You have been poisoned." "Why you?" "No. Who is controlling one of mine?" the prince's growled in rage as he grabbed the head of the attacker and forced his mental energy into his mind. "Who are you?" The advisor only grinned in a crazed manner as his eyes widened, almost popping from their sockets. "You know who I am," he whispered before the advisor's eyes turned white and he stopped breathing. The crown prince cursed and threw away the lifeless body. With an unsheathed sword and clad in armor, he charged out of his office. He found his guards killed with the missing arm of the advisor among the corpses. The sounds of battle distracted him. Looking out of one of the many windows the native humans were so fond of, showed him his personal guard fighting among each other with groups of foot soldiers mixed into the battle. It was pure chaos outside. Could this really be the work of a simple insurgent? Could some foreign mutation really infiltrate and control his army on such a scale? The crown prince couldn't help but suspect someone helping from the inside. The stab wound in his gut stung and he found that it kept bleeding. He did drink a health potion and an antidote, however, the wound showed no signs of healing. What kind of poison did they use? For now, he could do nothing but to deal with the current chaos. Lambda. Somewhere in Lambda district rows of data kept coming in. -0233. 2033. Lambda exploration drone 23. Coordinates, XXXXXXXXXNE. Encounter report. 1939, humanoid showing signs of deformation sighted image. Image shows a humanoid with tumorous growth standing on a snowy plain. 1939, following protocol, attempt of communication. Video file, video of the humanoid and a choppy voice trying to communicate with it. "Hello, fellow human." 19:42, attempt of communication, failed. 19:42, subject shows signs of aggression. 19.43, subject attacked drone 23. Video file. Video of the humanoid suddenly charging at the camera with huge aggression. 19:44, following protocol, self-defense enacted. 19:44, self-defense, successful. 19:45, status, minor injuries to biological components. Image. Picture of a human arm with several mechanical implants and a few scrapes and bruises. Error report. 20:05, biological interface error. 20:05, start error analysis. 20:06, error analysis concluded. 20:06, biological contamination detected. 20:06, following protocol, purge of biological contamination initiated. 20:07, purge failed. 20:07, biological interface failing. 20:08, start error analysis. 20:09, error analysis concluded. 20:09, biological contamination detected. 20:10, following protocol, purge of biological contamination initiated. 20:11, purge failed. 20:15, following protocol, purge of biological contamination initiated. 20:16, purge failed. 20, and dash, following protocol, purge of bioloical conform in fortion 1N1T14T3D. 20, purge failed. Purge failed. ZNDZ, following protocol, decommission of biological components. ZNDZ, send error report. Lambda Exploration Drone 23 has lost connection. Lambda Exploration Drone 24. Coordinates, XXXXXXXXE. Error report. 20:25, biological interface error. 20:25, start error analysis. 20:26, error analysis concluded. 20:26, status effect, freezing detected. 20:26, following protocol, heat protection is initiated. 20:27, status effect freezing, averted. Error report. 20:29, biological interface error. 20:29, start error analysis. 20:30, error analysis concluded. 20:30, vision impaired by weather conditions image. Image shows a dense snowstorm. 20:31, following protocol, change to heat vision and LiDAR orientation. Image. Image shows a monochrome depiction of a rocky ground and a black void past 20m. Encounter report. 20:31, massive biological creature detected. Image. Error, data of the image is incomplete. Lambda Exploration Drone 24 has lost connection. Lambda Exploration Drone 22. Coordinates, XXXXXXXXW. Encounter report. 20:15, alien species sighted. Image. Image shows a humanoid with pale blue skin and fins at different parts of its body. 20:15, alien species shows signs of hostility. 20:16, following protocol, self-defense enacted. 20:18, self-defense, successful. Image. Image shows the previous humanoid, now badly beaten and profusely bleeding on the ground. 20:18, following protocol, material retrieval. Lambda Exploration Drone 22 is returning to base. Hundreds of reports kept flowing into Lambda, feeding the knowledge of the district. Chapter 418. Doing his job. Arim, I might need some help. The hero had a sudden change of heart, facing 5 boss mobs at once. Typically, a hero would strengthen, the greater his adversary was, but that had its limits. Especially if he did not have the power of friendship on his side. The people that were currently with him, tried their best to convince the other side that they were not associated with him. What was Harker even thinking? Seth frantically thought about their options. The Great Me can take at least one of them down, maybe 2 alone. Puffles bragged about defeating the dungeon bosses. However, Seth had no worries about this fight. He was sure that other than him, everyone had hidden cards that could solve this fight. But what came afterward? There were roughly 50 floors above them, and another 50 below. The party was most likely able to completely wipe the dungeon, but it also entailed not just taking away the shelter of thousands of people, but maybe even killing them. It was a pain in the butt, morally and literally. Nobody among them wanted to have their secrets broadcasted to the universe, either. The only way to get out of this was to somehow appease the other side. The big question was, how? I have an idea. Ounce said triumphantly. What is it? Seth asked eagerly. Doyourjob. The lyre vibrated as the demon chuckled in his mind. My job? The muttered and thought about it. Oh, yeah. My job, he muttered with a smirk. While the party did their best not to be implicated, the hero fought all 5 bosses and their guards to a standstill. Well, he barely survived their attacks for a full 5 minutes. But at some point, he would get tired. Then he suddenly heard the tune of a song. Were his people finally helping him? He would have never expected for the bard to stand up for him. He thought he hated him. The battlefield came to a halt when the music started playing, but the hero was not happy at all. His face fell when he heard the lyrics that suddenly wormed their way into his brain. It sounded great, he wanted to sing along, but as the target of the song, he felt somewhat wronged. Our hero, has a warrior's heart. His arms are strong, his brains are fart. Solving his problems with muscle alone. Don't do it, as the hero has shown. His skill, sharp as steel, his mind, dense as lead. Without his strength, he would be long dead. So, listen. Please listen, children at home. Don't do it, as the hero has shown. The audience had long lowered their weapons and Seth stepped out of the encirclement. What started as bafflement, soon became smiles and even laughs among the crowd, as they made a circle to give the musician a stage. The infernal skald, supported by the demon lyre, went on for a full 20 strophes, mocking and ridiculing the mighty hero as a crazed muscle-head. Using witty remarks and insults, to tickle chuckles and laughter out of the audience, he diffused the tense situation. He even had to sing it thrice. All the while he made sure to include the audience at home. Seth felt no inhibition by singing this song, since it was a simple tune, without any power greater than making people laugh and shaming the hero. By stamping the hero as an idiot, unable to think farther than his spittle flies, he managed to calm the situation, to a point where he could speak with the administrator. I'm truly sorry for this embarrassing mishap. Seth bowed to the Grand Vizier as his words found their place between the metaphorical daggers already sticking in the hero's back. However, Ben did not even react anymore. After listening to Seth's song 4 times, he had become numb and was sulking in a corner, where the other party members made sure he did not cause any more trouble. So, this is how they see me. He kept mumbling to himself. Humph. I will accept your apology. It had been centuries since I had some entertainment like this. Yet, how about you sing a few other songs, one of the dungeon bosses interjected. What are you old things still doing here? Go away. Go back to your posts. I don't think there will be any more accidents. You just want to. Did you by chance not understand what I said? The Grand Vizier's red eyes glowed menacingly. The bosses and additional guards all left. After singing a few songs for the administrator, it was finally time to do what they came for. Get information. The old undead could not tell them any more about the current situation at the surface than they already knew. A citadel built into the cliffs on a coast, the Grand Vizier muttered. Personally, I can't help you with that. During my time there was no such thing within the borders of our kingdom. However, that was 1,000 years ago. I will ask Lord Bar to answer your questions or find people to answer them. In exchange, I want 300 gold or an artifact of at least epic rating. He struck the ground with his staff and a chest appeared before him. Everyone looked at the undead dungeon boss in confusion. Since when did a dungeon ask to get paid? I can see you are confused. Did you think help is free? As the administrator, I have to manage the dungeon's resources. Yeah. I was never asked for an item by a dungeon. Seth answered jokingly. Maybe it would be appropriate for the hero to pay this, as your leader. Although, I don't understand how someone like was chosen as a leader. It was really more of a choice by class, than a choice by vote. Seth agreed with the undead. The sad, beaten and battered hero walked up to the treasure chest and proceeded to throw in 300 gold coins. The moment the last coin entered, the lid closed, and the chest was tightly shut. As if to say, that there was no refund. Oh, and hero? I can guarantee you that none of these people are held here against their will, nor are they under a spell, the administrator said. Then why didn't you send reinforcements with Ahmed? Or offered shelter to the refugees of Ahaz, the hero said unconvinced. Ben accepted that his approach was wrong, but he still thought that there was something wrong. The undead let out a deep sigh that sounded like wind blowing through a mausoleum. Resources. We can't sustain any more people within the dungeon. We need all the capable hands within the dungeon to repair and maintain it cost-effectively. Are you happy now, that you know the shameful truth? Our great king lacks the resources to shelter everyone. The hero was dumbfounded. Seth was also intrigued. Despite traveling through a different world for a long time and frequently visiting dungeons, he knew very little about their inner workings. Thinking about it, it made sense, that everything in a dungeon came at a cost. Leave now. Go and pester Lord Bar with your presence. I have work to do. The situation with the hero had become slightly awkward, but the guard faithfully led them to Lord Bar of Baram. The Lord's office was a small room, not much bigger than a janitor's closet. It was filled with cabinets and papers. The man was once well-rounded but now seemed gaunt with his clothes being baggy. The mighty mustache and goatee would have been impressive in their prime but were now tousled and unkempt. Still, he had friendly and honest eyes, despite being a little fidgety in general. Seeing the group and hearing that the administrator sent them, he seemed almost relieved to come out and talk with them in the hallway. A ruin at the cliffs of a coast, he repeated similar to the administrator after hearing their purpose. Well, I can tell you one thing for sure, it's not along our coasts maybe, give me a moment. He went back into his tiny office and came back out with a map. It showed the outline of the continent they were currently on. Going diagonally from the northwest corner to the southeast, where it had a thin land bridge to another big landmass in the lower right corner. Besides these two, there were also the coasts of two other continents, that were not connected. The territory, taking in the continents they were currently on and the shores in the southwest, was called the Shathnisian Empire. I know of no places like you described along the former shores of our empire, or the sea we shared with Tyrybhz. I also never heard of the duchy in the north to have cliffs at their shores. The Lord showed it to them on the map. Tyrybhz was the landmass in the southeast of the map, while the duchy was a big island to the north. Your best chance would be to ask the seamen that traveled to the western continent and Tyrybhz. I know of a few captains and merchants in the catacombs that could help you with that. Let's go visit them right away. The Lord seemed eager to get away from the small room, filled with work and paper. My lord, is that really okay? The guard tried to stop him. Of course, it is. If I say it's okay, he told the guard off and hurriedly took the lead at the helm of the group. Chapter 419. To Ahaz. Lord Bar brought them around all the city and all 30 populated floors to speak with a myriad of people. The outcome was easy. To sum up, they had to go to Ahaz. The picture the different sailors and merchants painted was more or less clear. Although none of them knew of ruins at the coast, however, most agreed on one place. The continent of Tyrybhz, where the republic of the same name originated, was known for its high cliffs all around. Only a few suggested that the much bigger western continent had also many places with cliffs at the shore. There was a well-known sea route from Ahaz to Aberth, the secondary capital of the republic. From there it was easy to find a ferry over to their main continent. That was before their world crumbled. Another option was to traverse the straits by ferry and walk along the shores, instead of using the sea route. Whatever they did, they first had to reach Ahaz. This made the hero and Ahmed very happy. Ben Harker felt confirmed since he wanted to go there from the start. Ahmed was already happy to have reliable travel companions, even if the hero didn't end up helping Ahaz in the end. The people he brought with him on the way here, had died during monster attacks or gone insane during the journey. The cursed sun had many effects on the natives, who suffered a lot despite the system's blessing as Orihumas. It was not simple elemental damage. After it was clear that they would head for Ahaz, they didn't have much more time to spend in the dungeon. Ahmed hurried them to depart since it was currently night. The sun had sunken. Instead of getting a rest while waiting for the night, they had walked around for hours inside the dungeon. No matter how unwilling Seth and the others were, Ahmed had a compelling argument to forego their rest. It took at least 6 days to reach Ahaz, and according to the Night and Lord Bar, the blood sun would rise again on the 8th day. If they rested now, they would miss a night they could use for travel. Every night was important in the current world, and they did better to reach the city with ample time until the Blood Sunday. It wasn't just that the empty wastelands would slowly fill with all kinds of alien monsters that came through the pathworks or dungeons. The closer the Blood Sun came, the stronger the abominations roaming the wilderness would become. They were already strengthened during the day, but as the Blood Sun neared, their power would eventually double or even triple. Fights during the night were hard, but the Night described fights during the day as nigh impossible. He told of beasts covered in timorous armor and recovery on par with a troll. They sound delicious. Puffles commented on the description. Seth shuddered. Why do you think so? They sound disgusting. They must have a high affinity with the sun. Just the right nutrient bar for someone of my greatness. It's a shame I don't intend to show you in front of the cameras. At least, not if I am not forced to. But, the sadness in the advisor's voice was so clearly transmitted and so heartrending deep, that Seth could barely take it. The nightmare centipede felt truly wronged. How about I find an excuse to bag the corpses and you can eat them later? I prefer them fresh but, fine. The advisor answered poutily. Seth started sweating since he knew what the advisor meant with fresh. It meant eating them alive. Puffles had developed the horrifying habit of eating his prey alive, if possible. Following Ahmed's advice, they departed from the dungeon without getting the chance to meet the mysterious God King. Krana. The city was in an uproar. No, the Empire was in an uproar. However, it was not about the fact that the group from Earth were the first to meet survivors and gain information. Neither was it Seth's song mocking a hero. No signs of them. Yes, Your Majesty. They vanished without a trace. The Emperor sighed. One of the evaluation teams had vanished. Originally, they sent 9 teams to look for the dragon bones. The 3 favorites originated from worlds with highly developed magic knowledge. One of these teams had vanished without a trace. The recorders simply went offline and until now nobody had returned through home call. It was the first time a team just vanished. People died or returned and got disqualified, sure. But they had never just lost the recorder signal without any sign of their destruction. I didn't think something like this would happen. Not this early. But how would they have managed to find them? Unless you already have a beacon, the entrance point can't be controlled, the advisor asked cluelessly. What if the traitor was already among them? The Emperor gave a shocking question. But that would mean they are among us. An inside job? Probably. They stayed in solemn silence for a moment, when the advisor suddenly remembered something. That reminds me of another anomaly. It might be connected. What is it? The Emperor prompted him to speak. The advisor searched through his pile of papers. The sensors have reported some weird glitches with the recorder golems on the team from Earth. Earth? That was Lena's team, right? What happened? Who would aim for that team? Sure, they had a hero and that blacksmith. Nobody should know about the letter and a hero was not that special, so. Yes, they were glitches with some of the drones. The screens are said to have gone black for moments. Afterward, the recorders started to act slightly weird. Not listening to commands, unable to debug or reboot. They are still functioning, but they don't always follow their programming. Sounds like someone manipulated them. How many are affected? The advisor looked through his stack of paper. 5, Your Highness. 2 personal recorders and 3 of the field drones meant for group and landscape shots. I think I have an inkling for who the culprit is. This quickly, Your Majesty. The advisor looked up at his ruler in surprise. Whose recorders were manipulated? Arim, the bards and the slime ranchers. Good. I don't think we have to worry about that issue. It's probably not them. As you command. What does it mean, when a team just vanishes? Were they killed? Lydia asked concerned. No, they would say they died and not vanished in that case, Mina said seriously. She was the most concerned out of all of them. Don't worry. Seth is strong. And Ellie, too. Finn said with unwavering confidence. They had all been in a good mood when their team finally got some action and publicity a few days ago. The first team to find survivors. The official commentators mentioned Seth and the others climbing to the number 1 position in contributions. They showed only a short best-of from the conversations the group and Lord Bar had with locals, but it had given the Empire a great insight into the geography of Kavati Coan. Seth's song, titled The Denzi Born Comes, had even been trending for some time. However, it was quickly overshadowed by the disappearance of a whole team. The members of Minasmar and Krina had sobered up and were now worrying about the danger lurking in that world. Even though most teams were faring well until now, except for Hannigan's, which had been unlucky to lose the thief and scout early on. Unlike Seth's group that already had a set destination, other teams were still aimlessly walking around. Most of the other teams still tried to find settlements. Only one other team had a set course, thanks to a diviner among them. The geographic knowledge thanks to the map shown by the team of Earth, the broadcastings could now give comprehensive updates on the rough positions of the different teams. The great metropole overrun with monsters where Hannigan's former team landed was actually a birth. They were the closest team to Seth's current destination. Of course, this was censored. The viewer wouldn't know what conclusion the team of Earth reached until it became apparent from their journey. A doorbell interrupted their discussion. Soon a butler entered the reeking living room. "Miss Finn, your parents and the second prince of the fair folk have come for a visit. They are waiting in the salon." "What? Shit. No, what are my parents doing here?" the tin brute screamed in panic. As if plunged into depths of despair, she started hectically flying around before hiding in the sofa cracks. "Tell them I am not here. There is no fairy in this house. Make them go away," her muffled voice ordered the butler from within the sofa. Everyone was confused. Even the professional butler hesitated for a moment. "Very well, I shall inform them of your non-presence." "What going on, Finn?" Mina asked the fairy after the butler left. Everyone on the sofa was questioning. "They probably came to bring me back and make me marry," the squeaked from the sofa crack. "Marry?" everyone exclaimed shocked. "I don't want to marry. But that stupid prince will insist." Before she and her parents had chosen the path of least resistance. Send her off and evade the royalty's advances. This way they did not have to offend anyone. She couldn't make a scene in her own home world. Even less in Krina. They suddenly heard a squeaky bellow from another part of the mansion. Like a chipmunk on steroids. "Finn Bell Smiter. This prince has come to meet you. Do you dare to ignore a direct royal summon?" Chapter 420. The Cavalry. It was the middle of the night. The group was on the go, wandering through the dark wasteland, following Ahmed's lead. Seth was walking in the rear together with Ellie. The bard opened his hand and, unnoticed by the rest of the group, a recorder rose back into the sky. "Are you done?" the slime rancher whispered from the side. "Yep, that was the last one. Now, we won't have to worry as much anymore," Seth said with a mischievous smile. Seth had gotten the blueprints for recorders when he was wandering around Krina with Mina. They had come across many shops that sold magical devices like the little golem cameras. His class advancement gave him the ability to appraise devices, and Blacksmith's eyes could give him all blueprints up to epic by appraising them. This made it easy for him to come up with a way to insert his golem souls into the recorders. The surveillance drones and the personal recorder of Ellie and himself were now under his control. This gave them a little more freedom to react in case the situation became dire. However, the chance of that happening was small, since the rest of the party could not be underestimated. Night in the wasteland was surprisingly uneventful. No, maybe it was wrong to say that. They met a few nocturnal monsters, but they were no obstacle for their group. The hero had quickly recovered his motivation after he heard that his wish to go to Ahaz was the right decision. They had made good distance during the night when they finally saw the first rays of the sun in the morning. Things started to change from here. Although the group was mostly unfazed thanks to the rings, other monsters started popping up. During the night, they had encountered monsters commonly known to travel through the pathworks. The basic composition of the base monsters did not change, but they were now horribly disfigured. Like Ahmed had said, the power was completely different compared to the normal beats. As they were looking for a shelter during the day, they met a group of orcs at a huge rock formation. These typically 2+ m tall, green-skinned hunks, with their huge tusks, looked almost unrecognizable. They looked swollen and their skin was burned rosy between thick swarths of black cancerous growths covering their bodies. The moment they saw them, they charged at the group from Earth, without any sense or strategy. Like always, the hero stepped forward to meet them. He leisurely swung his sword, but it became clear why they did not need any sense or strategy. In a surprise, Harker watched the epic sword, that was given by the Empire, bounce off the black patches of cancerous skin, as if they were armor plates. In a hurry, he managed to block the beast's attack just in time. "I might need some support for these." Facing the kind of strength and defense these monsters exhibit made the hero ask for team play. Brock, Ellie, Cade, and Marcel joined the front lines, while Misto, the Mist Demon, and Elsa, the Ice Mage, started casting spells. Seth, Yvette, and Rich were busy casting support or curses from the back. The merchant stood alongside them and shot arrows, from an eccentric-looking bow. Except for the more normal members of the group, like Elsa, Marcel, and Brock, everyone was only showing the bare minimum of their skills during the team play. Such was Seth's evaluation at least. Well, he didn't know whether Rich held back since his skills were limited without the party being his slaves. Otherwise, it was rather obvious from the kind of behavior everyone was exhibiting. Everybody was calm and collected as if the situation they faced was something they could also deal with alone. This made it apparent to Seth that they were most likely holding back, just like him and Ellie. It would take more than this to make them show the depths of their skills. As for the three from Delta, he knew them and their capabilities pretty well, after they traveled together for weeks. They had no problems facing these beasts one-on-one, but they were not calm in the sense of being able to deal with this situation, no matter what happened. As such, their time in the wastelands, meeting smaller groups of abominations, was more of a training exercise in teamwork, than it was a danger to them. Krana! The second prince was furious. He shouted and hollered and berated Finn's parents openly. He had more than enough of this situation. Even after he went through the trouble of propping her up as a hero to the public and having his father bestow an engagement onto them. Even when he finally found her after she ran away. Months' worth of royal summons had gone unanswered and ignored. How dare a person born to lower nobility act like this? She should feel honored to become his wife. It was the chance of her life to achieve something great. Become a queen. Instead, she used the next best excuse to run off and cut off any contact with the kingdom. To ignore this prince. What did she think who he was? What did her parents think who they were, not to? The beautiful fairy and her husband looked awkwardly as the prince was screaming at them at the top of his voice. In front of someone else's butler no less. Suddenly, the door was thrown open. A cute beastman girl with cat ears barged into the room. Go to your own home, if you want to train your vocal cords. Your whimsical, squeaky whines ring in my ears, she confronted the tiny royalty. Hearing some arrogant noble berating someone else's parents for not going along with their selfish desires and sacrificing their child's future had incensed the free-spirited cat assassin. Especially since this was about Finn. Who are you to tell me what to do? Insolent beast! Know your place, you are not worthy to be in the presence of this prince, he first asked incensed, but his voice turned to disgust when he saw what he was talking to. As if it wasn't bad enough for my future wife to spend her time with humans, but even with beastmen. Have you not educated your own daughter? He made a snarky comment toward the two other fairies, Finn's parents. Future wife? Ha! As if a tiny, rude ball of arrogance like you was worthy of her. You are unworthy. Mina spat out. Unworthy, she repeated and pointed at the second prince. Tiny. You, she had touched upon a taboo of the fairy race. None of them could handle being called small. They were even worse than dwarves in that regard. You don't deny you are unworthy. At least you understand. She is way too good, for something like you. Something like me? How dare you dirty beastman tell me I was unworthy? I will have your head. Suddenly the room dimmed, and a dangerous aura emitted from the tiny prince. Several armored fairy knights broke through the windows and surrounded the prince. At the same time, the door behind Mina exploded. People who had been lazing around on the couch until just a moment ago had switched from their pajamas to powerful armor in split seconds. In the front was Finn, who had just pulverized the door in anger. I don't care if you berate my parents. But nobody touches Mina, the father and mother pair's face darkened. The butler was looking around in shock, suddenly caught between two powerful sides. Their menacing auras clashing in a standoff. Events came thick and fast. Then the wall exploded out of nowhere, causing the butler to finally lose consciousness from shock. Debris flew through the room and thick dust hung in the air. Am I too late? Princess Lena and a troop of imperial knights charged in through the hole. What is the meaning of this? The second prince asked shocked, suddenly facing not just Mina's friends, but the imperial guard. That's my line. How dare you trespass on the area exclusive to the relatives of evaluation participants, she said righteously but winked in Finn's direction. They were the cavalry. Of course, the princess had spent enough time with Finn to know about the fairy's problems. She had covered for her in Delta, however, the Empire was different. She had more duties to take care of and the prince had used this opening to get access to the palace compounds, using the identity of her parents. This has nothing to do with the Empire. It's an issue among the fair folk. Don't intervene. You are threatening citizens of the Empire, on the Empire's territory, in a place you are not supposed to be. Take him away, the princess commanded. To everyone's surprise, it was not the Imperial Guard that moved to detain the prince. It was the fairy knights, that encircled the prince. What are you doing? You are my guards. I have already contacted your father about your transgressions. The king has ordered your highness to return immediately. We are to bring you back, so you can take responsibility, the guard leader said. What? But he said unwillingly, shooting venomous glances at Mina, Fina, and the others, before being brought away by his own guards. Seems like we were in time. The princess heaved a sigh of relief. Her face twitched a little when a specific smell wormed its way into her nose. How about you guys wash up and we eat out together?